Inside the Arctic Systems office in New York, Zach Bell hung up the phone and grinned at Zane King. I told you, contacting Ethan was the right move. Zane chuckled. That depends on whether Mr. Ford actually has time. Besides, we're going to Chicago for business, not a vacation. We need to get back as soon as we're done. The company had dispatched the three of them, Zach, Zane, and Danny, to the Chicago Bureau of Communications to negotiate Arctic Systems' request for a dedicated fiber optic line. Zach was the technical lead, Zane handled operations, and together they were responsible for the on-site presentation. Danny, the HR head, wasn't originally supposed to go, but since Xavier Yale, who usually handled external relations, was unavailable, Danny had been drafted to tag along. The plan was to fly into Chicago, handle the negotiation, and fly right back. But Zach wanted to see Ethan Ford, so they had added a detour to the itinerary. Zane didn't mind. Spending a couple of days in Chicago sounded fine, but he was worried about imposing on Ethan. Relax, Ethan said he's free. Sitting down for a chat won't hurt, Zach said, waving his hand dismissively. A knock came at the door. It opened to reveal Danny, who smiled at them. What are you guys chatting about? Hey, Danny, perfect timing. I just got off the phone with Ethan. We're meeting him tomorrow. He's got time, Zach informed him. Danny smiled. That's great. However, we might need to head to Chicago earlier than planned. Huh? What? Zach asked, surprised. The secretary at the Bureau of Communications just called. Director Lawrence is going out of town the day after tomorrow, and his schedule tomorrow is packed. They want us there for a meeting before noon, Danny explained with a shrug. Is that so? All right, I guess we're leaving first thing in the morning then, Zach said with a sigh. Danny walked into the office and sat on the sofa, his expression turning serious. This negotiation is critical for us. IceQ's online user base is exploding, and the traffic load on our servers is getting dangerous. We absolutely need to secure approval for 3 dedicated enterprise lines to support IceQ's growth. Whether we get the permits depends entirely on how this meeting goes. Zane rubbed his chin. It shouldn't be a problem, right? Danny shook his head. Zane, dealing with the government isn't like dealing with businessmen. Plenty of companies apply for dedicated lines, but getting them approved isn't a sure thing. But we'll do our best and leave the rest to fate. If it works, great. If not, we'll have to figure something else out. Maybe pull some strings. Zach rubbed his temples, offering a bitter smile. Just thinking about dealing with bureaucrats gives me a headache. It's worse than training a class of rookie coders. He was a tech guy. Burying his head in code was fine, but navigating politics was agonizing for him. That was exactly why Matt Thorne had assigned Danny to the team. Danny had stronger interpersonal skills. Hey, Zach, you just focus on explaining the technical requirements. Leave the talking to me. Don't be nervous, Danny reassured him. Yeah, sounds like a plan. Zach grinned. Then we leave for Chicago first thing tomorrow morning. The next morning, the trio rented a car and drove straight to the Chicago Bureau of Communications. Upon arrival, they met with Director Lawrence in a conference room. Director Lawrence, hello. Danny stood up to greet him, shaking his hand. The other two followed suit. Director Lawrence merely offered a faint smile, his attitude neither warm nor cold. Mr. Danny, you arrived this morning? Lawrence asked suddenly. Yes. We flew in this morning and came straight here, Danny replied, slightly taken aback. Lawrence frowned slightly, a hint of displeasure crossing his face, but he kept his hands behind his back. That must have been a tiring journey. Have a seat. Lawrence sat down and casually flipped through the materials Danny and the others had submitted. Once the meeting began, Zach and Zane took turns explaining Arctic Systems' situation and the urgent need for the dedicated lines for IceQ. But Lawrence seemed uninterested, occasionally nodding and making non-committal noises. Finally, Danny made a concluding statement, emphasizing the importance of a line for the company's development. At the end, Lawrence finally spoke. All right, I get the gist of it. Regarding your request, we'll study it. You know, approving a dedicated line involves cross-departmental cooperation. And with so many companies wanting one, well, our bureau has limited manpower. The work is quite complex. Zach, missing the subtext, asked anxiously. Director Lawrence, when can we expect the approval? The bureau staff in the room exchanged glances. Some smiled meaningfully, some shook their heads, and others looked at Lawrence. No one answered. Lawrence smiled. I know you're in a hurry, but we really need to study this further. This isn't a small matter, and it can't be rushed. Zach was confused. Was his explanation not clear enough? It shouldn't be. I was very clear. So why didn't they approve it on the spot? A middle-aged assistant stood up and smiled. All right, that concludes the meeting for today. Gentlemen, please go back and wait for news. The director has an internal meeting shortly. Lawrence stood up, nodded at the three of them, then clasped his hands behind his back and walked briskly out of the conference room. Soon, only the three of them were left. Danny, Zane, isn't he stringing us along? Was I not clear enough? He should have understood, right? Why didn't he just sign off on it? Zach scratched his head, completely baffled. Danny replayed his own words in his mind. There had been no mistakes. He shook his head. I don't know. We said everything we needed to say. We even gave the secretary a heads up, and he seemed to get it. Director Lawrence shouldn't have missed the point. Zane glanced toward the door and lowered his voice. Why do I get the feeling Director Lawrence doesn't really care about us? Danny shrugged, indicating he didn't know either. Forget it. It's almost noon. Let's go grab some lunch first. We can come back and ask again this afternoon, Danny suggested. I guess that's the only option. I told Ethan we'd head over to his place after we finished up here, Zach said with a nod. Let's go, let's go. Fill our stomachs first, Zane said, standing up with a smile. The three left the bureau and wandered the nearby streets, looking for a place to eat. They were on the northern edge of the west side, a relatively remote area away from the city center. There weren't many restaurants around. After walking 2 blocks, they finally found a seafood restaurant that looked decent. More than a dozen tanks were lined up at the entrance, filled with live fish, lobsters, and various seafood that looked very fresh. Flanking the entrance were signs that read, fair prices, fresh catches. Zach loved seafood, so he pointed at the shop and grinned. Let's stop looking and just eat here. A burly man in a tank top was standing at the door smoking. Seeing the three approach, a look of excitement flashed in his eyes. He tossed his cigarette and greeted them enthusiastically. 3 bosses here for lunch? Cool mean. Boss, your seafood is fresh, right? Zach asked casually. Of course it's fresh, extremely lively. Come take a look. Our seafood is jumping with energy. You can rest assured, the burly man in the tank top promised, patting his chest. Fresh is good. We'll eat here then. Table for 3, Zach said with a nod and a smile. Zane leaned in and whispered, Zach, won't the seafood here be expensive? The burly man overheard and quickly interjected. Boss, don't worry. Our restaurant sells at fair market prices, all standard rates. Zane was skeptical, but unable to withstand the man's enthusiastic hospitality. He agreed. As soon as they entered, the man grabbed a notepad and pen. Come, bosses, pick your seafood first. Pick whatever you like, it's all live. Zach grinned at the other two. Haha, order whatever you want. This meal is on me. Mr. Bell is feeling generous. Danny gave a thumbs up. Zach, I'm easy. Just something simple for the 3 of us, Zane shrugged. Zach slung an arm around his shoulder. Hey, don't worry about it. How much can one meal cost? Order up. They proceeded to select 5 types of seafood, including a large lobster, abalone, and sea crabs. After ordering, they found a table. Not 10 minutes later, the dishes started arriving. Zane asked in surprise, You guys cook this fast? The burly man chuckled. These are all quick dishes, doesn't take much time. Please enjoy your meal, bosses. With that, the man retreated. Zach looked at the table, especially the bright red Australian lobster, practically drooling. Let's eat. We've got work to do this afternoon. They picked up their chopsticks and dug in. But after 2 bites, Zane frowned. Something fell off. Why is the crab meat falling apart? Is this really fresh? Zach paused. Falling apart? Let me try. He picked up a piece and put it in his mouth. Sure enough, the texture was mushy, and there was very little sweetness or flavor. It really is. Danny tasted it too and exclaimed, Holy crap, did we get ripped off? The meat is so loose. This doesn't feel fresh at all. Zach's eyes widened. That's impossible. When I picked it, it was jumping around. Boss! Zach stood up and shouted twice. The burly man walked over. What can I do for you, bosses? Zach pointed at the crab angrily. Boss, this crab isn't fresh. We clearly picked a live one. How could you switch it with a dead one to fool us? The man's expression changed. He narrowed his eyes. Boss, you can't go around slandering people. We use live crabs. That's just how crab tastes. There's no mistake. Zach was stunned. He didn't expect the guy to deny it so blatantly. Damn it, do you think I've never eaten crab before? The meat is falling apart. How could it be alive? Saying this, Zach tasted the lobster. It had a similar texture. His face darkened further as he questioned. Even the lobster isn't fresh. The burly man said coldly. You say it's not fresh, so it's not fresh? The dish is the dish. I say it's live, so it's live. Bastard, is this how you do business? Are you obviously trying to fleece us? Zach shouted in anger. He finally realized this place was a tourist trap designed to rip people off. Zane, fearing a conflict, stood up to mediate. All right, let's not argue with him. We won't eat this food. Danny slapped the table. Right, we're not eating. Is this stuff even fit for humans? Zach glared at the burly man. Is this how you run a business? You should shut down. I'm not eating this garbage. As they moved to leave, the burly man suddenly blocked their path. You can leave, but settle the bill first. That'll be $800. The man extended his hand, his voice icy. Zach and the others froze. He ripped them off and still wants money. The nerve of this guy. And $800 at that. Zach was shaking with rage. He pointed at the man's nose. Shameless. You dare ask us for money. The burly man sneered. Fuck, even if the president walked in here, he'd have to pay for his meal. You ordered the food. We killed the big shrimp and crabs. You trying to dine and dash. The argument attracted the attention of the other staff in the shop. A dozen men gathered around, encircling Zach's group and blocking their exit. Zane and Danny's faces went pale. It seemed that without paying, these people wouldn't let them leave. Jimmy, these three punks want to eat without paying? A blonde-haired thug asked, glancing at them. Yeah, no money, no leaving. Jimmy, the hook. Han adjusted his white tank top, sat on a chair, and lit a cigarette for himself. Outrageous. This is robbery. I'm telling you. I'm not giving you a cent. Zach shouted. He had never been scammed like this. He might be blunt, but he had a backbone. Jimmy cursed, fuck you. Dare not to pay. And you can leave an arm or a leg behind. Fuck, don't you know whose turf this is? Hearing the naked threat, Zach's face flushed with anger, but seeing the dozen men, he didn't dare escalate further. The atmosphere in the room froze, suffocating. Suddenly, a ringtone broke the deadly silence. Zach picked up his phone and saw it was Ethan's number. He answered immediately. Ethan's laughing voice came through. Hey Zach, where you guys? Have you arranged accommodation for tonight? Zach lowered his voice. Ethan, I've run into a bit of situation here. Let me handle this first. HM? What situation? Ethan asked, surprised. Zach roughly explained what was happening. On the other end, Ethan's voice turned serious. Where are you right now? Zach hesitated, not sure if Ethan showing up would help, but he whispered, Lake Spring Street in the West Side. South Star Seafood. Not far. I happen to be in the West Side too. Wait for me. I'll be there soon. I'll handle it. Ethan reassured him. Zach didn't want to drag Ethan into this. He thought about just paying the money to avoid trouble that might hurt Ethan. He felt guilty. No, Ethan. These guys are just thugs. They're obviously running a scam. Even if you come, you probably can't do anything. We'll solve it ourselves, Zach said, shaking his head. On the other end, he could already hear the sound of Ethan starting a car. Zach, listen to me. I'll handle it. The phone hung up. Zach stood there, stunned. He didn't expect Ethan to be so loyal. Rushing over without a second thought the moment he heard they were in trouble. He was deeply moved. Sitting in the chair smoking, Jimmy saw him on the phone and sneered disdainfully. Hell, what? Calling for backup? Call whoever you want. Call the whole neighborhood. I'm scared of no one. Fuck. I'm telling you, even if your parents show up, it won't work. You don't pay this money, you don't walk out that door. About half an hour later, the sound of a car engine outside broke the standoff inside the restaurant. Zach looked toward the entrance and saw Ethan's figure. A young man was following close behind him. Ethan, Mr. Ford. Zach, Zane, and Danny tried to move forward to greet him, but Jimmy lifted a leg to block their path. I said, you aren't going anywhere. No money, no leaving. Jimmy glared viciously at the three of them. Ethan's expression was calm as he walked over quickly. He glanced at Zach, then looked at Jimmy. Boss, this isn't how business is done, is it? Business is about integrity. Boss, if you operate like this, how do you expect to stay in business? If they could talk it out, nobody wanted trouble. It just depended on whether this owner had any sense. Jimmy stood up, walked up to Ethan, looked him up and down, and scoffed. Fuck, who the hell are you? Teaching me how to do business? Do I need you to teach me? Fuck, if you're so loyal, $800, you pay it then? Ethan huffed coldly. Boss, is this really about $800? He could afford a few thousand, but he wouldn't pay this money on principle. Jimmy spat on the floor and said viciously, It is about the money. Cut the crap. Either pay up or get lost. Ethan's face went cold. And if I take them with me today? Jimmy took a step forward, threatening. You can try. Clatter. A dozen thugs around Jimmy dragged their chairs over, surrounding Ethan and Duke Drake. The atmosphere instantly became extremely tense, like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Ethan. Zach, worried that Ethan would get dragged into danger, tried to intervene. But Ethan raised a hand, cutting him off. Ethan looked at Jimmy and asked calmly, There's another rule in business. Peace breeds wealth. Boss, are you sure you won't let them go? Jimmy laughed disdainfully. Why should I let them go? Kneel down and beg me. Kneel. A cold light flashed in Ethan's eyes. He suddenly raised his knee, driving it hard into Jimmy's stomach. Thud. The blow was powerful, catching Jimmy completely off guard. Seeing Ethan strike, the surrounding lackeys grabbed their stools and charged. Duke Drake, standing behind Ethan, flashed forward and unleashed a rapid series of kicks. Bam, 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 bam. 4 wooden chairs shattered on impact, and 2 men were sent flying along with the splinters. Duke's display of skill instantly stunned the entire room. Jimmy's lackeys were all dumbfounded. Holy shit, is that even human? That was terrifying. For a moment, the lackeys looked at Duke with fear in their eyes. Zach and the others were equally stunned. They hadn't expected the young man following Ethan to be so formidable. And, judging by his bearing, he looked like he came from the military. Is this Ethan's bodyguard? While everyone was in shock, Duke grabbed Jimmy by the neck with his left hand, dragging him up from the floor. A dagger had appeared in his right hand, pressed against Jimmy's throat. Now, can we go? Duke asked coldly. Jimmy looked at the dagger at his throat and trembled all over. Damn, this guy is ruthless. With his life in someone else's hands, all his arrogant bluster vanished. Calm down. You can go. Jimmy stammered. Duke scoffed. Coward. With that, Duke threw the man to the ground and put away the dagger. Ethan looked at Zach and smiled. Zach, the boss said we can go. Okay. Zach was dazed, still processing what had just happened. Phew, glad nothing went wrong. Ethan is incredible. Ethan led Zach and his group out of the restaurant. The lackeys rushed to help Jimmy up from the floor. Boss, are you okay? Jimmy felt he had lost major face in front of his men. He raged, fuck, bunch of useless trash. He looked in the direction Ethan had left, a vicious glint flashing in his eyes. Outside the restaurant, an Audi was parked at the curb. Ethan motioned for the 3 to get in. Once inside, Zane expressed his gratitude. Mr. Ford, thank you so much for just now. If not for you, we would have just had to eat that loss. Ethan smiled. No need to be polite. We're all on the same side. You guys are in Chicago for business, unfamiliar with the place. Running into some shady merchants is normal. Not everyone in this world is a good person. Zach scratched his head, embarrassed. Man, we were planning to find you after we finished our work, but now we've made you come all this way for us. Ethan laughed heartily. Haha, I happen to be handling business nearby anyway. How could I not come when you were in trouble? All right, I'll take you somewhere else to eat. I haven't had lunch yet either. With that, the car drove away, heading toward the Grand Monarch Hotel. At the Grand Monarch, Ethan told them to order whatever they liked. A legitimate 5-star hotel wouldn't rip them off. Zach and the others thanked him profusely, but were still polite, ordering only 3 dishes. Ethan smiled and shook his head, instructing the waiter to add 5 more. During the meal, Zane's phone suddenly rang. It was Director Lawrence's aide, Assistant Warren. Hello, Assistant Warren? Zane's face showed pleasant surprise, thinking there was good news from the bureau. On the other end, Assistant Warren cleared his throat. Mr. King, we just had an internal discussion. Your application for the dedicated line isn't impossible, but the bureau is extremely busy lately. We're shorthanded, so you might have to wait a while. Zane's expression instantly filled with dismay. Wait? Assistant Warren, how long do we need to wait? We need to get this done urgently. Can you ask the director to make an exception? Mr. King, I know you're in a hurry, but this isn't something that can be rushed. You know how it is, we have to go through the approval process and all that. You understand, Warren said soothingly. Zane's face fell. He felt the perfunctory attitude. Then Assistant Warren, how long are we talking? Can you give me a number? Mr. King, I'm sorry. It's up to the higher-ups. I can't give a specific time, Warren said, dodging the question. After a brief chat with no results, the other side clearly didn't want to talk further, so Zane hung up. Zane put down his phone, looking grim. If this didn't go through, it would have a massive impact on Arctic Systems' growth. Zach turned to him. What's the verdict, Zane? What did they say? Zane sighed helplessly. Our dedicated line approval is probably getting delayed. I asked for a reason, and Warren just said they're busy, said he didn't know details. What are we going to do? Danny's eyes widened, fuming. This is outrageous. Aren't they playing us for fools? Dealing with them is really damn difficult. Zach, being a straightforward tech guy, slapped the table. No way. How can they just drag this out? Complaint. We must file a complaint with the Oversight Department. Zane glanced at him. Complaint? If we really complain, aren't you afraid they'll make things even harder for us in the future? Zach was speechless, not knowing how to answer. Ethan, listening to their conversation, gathered the gist of the situation. Hey, Zach, which bureau did you go to? Chicago Bureau of Communications. Ethan, why do the departments here operate like this? Zach said helplessly. He then explained the whole sequence of events to Ethan. After listening, Ethan understood perfectly. He couldn't help but chuckle. You guys, why didn't you tell me beforehand? You wouldn't have even needed to make the trip personally. All right, I get it. After we eat, I'll take you back there. Zach asked in surprise. Ethan, you have a way? Ethan gave a mysterious smile. Dealing with the system isn't like negotiating business with others. Zach, I admit your computer skills are incredible, but when it comes to dealing with bureaucracy, you might still have a thing or two to learn. Zach shrugged and grinned. Ethan, I'm just a tech guy. What do I know about these twists and turns? Ethan smiled. It's fine. I'll go with you in a bit. We'll get this done. Zane was puzzled, secretly guessing. Could Ethan be close with Director Lawrence? Able to put in a word. But if they couldn't handle it, they might really have to rely on Mr. Ford. After the meal, Ethan drove them back to the Bureau of Communications. Once there, Ethan opened the trunk. Zach saw it was packed full of gifts, various cigarettes, alcohol, jade ornaments stacked to the brim. Zach asked in amazement, My God, Ethan, all these gifts. Who are you planning to give them to? Ethan laughed. To the people who need to receive them, of course. I always keep this stuff stocked in the car. Zach was puzzled. Always stocked in the car? What? Ethan grabbed 2 gift bags containing cigarettes and alcohol and closed the trunk. Because sometimes you need them, and you don't want to make a special trip to buy them. Like right now. Did you guys bring anything when you came to Chicago? Zane immediately understood and laughed awkwardly. We just thought we were here for official business. Didn't think that far. Ethan smiled. You can't get anything done without these things. You guys might be good at business, but in social dealings, you still need to pay attention to methods. Zane nodded repeatedly, embarrassed. Yes, Mr. Ford. It was our oversight. Ethan held the gift boxes and signaled. All right, let's go in. Zane, call Assistant Warren first. Just say we're preparing to leave, and before we go, we wanted to come specifically to thank him for looking after us today. Okay. Zane paused, but then did as told, calling Assistant Warren. A moment later, Zane hung up, excited. Hey, Warren said he'll see us in the conference room. Ethan nodded. All right then, let's go. The group entered the bureau and went to the conference room. Before long, the door opened, and a middle-aged man in an administrative jacket walked in. Oh, Mr. King, sorry to keep you waiting. Assistant Warren greeted with a smile. Hello, Assistant Warren. Not at all, we just arrived. Zane stood to greet him, then introduced Ethan. This is our company's operations director, Mr. Ford. Ethan took the gift bags, walked up, placed them aside, shook hands with Warren, and smiled. Hello, Assistant Warren. I heard from Zane that they were able to discuss business here, thanks to you. So, before heading back, we thought we absolutely had to thank you. Just a little company welfare perk. We can't use it all. So, Assistant Warren, please accept it. Warren glanced at the bags on the table. He couldn't see the content from the outside, but a peek inside revealed 2 bottles of Macallan and 2 cartons of Lucky Strikes. His eyes lit up immediately. Now this operations director knows how to do things. Unlike those 3, who came straight from New York empty-handed. No wonder the leadership ignored them. Assistant Warren feigned a refusal. Oh no, Mr. Ford, you're too polite. Ethan pressed the gifts into his hands, his expression serious. It's just a little something, company perks, not bought with money. Assistant Warren, no need to decline. You've helped us so much, this small token really is nothing. Take it. Warren went with the flow and accepted, smiling. Haha. All right, since Mr. Ford insists, I'll accept. Zach watched their exchange of pleasantries and feigned sincerity, dumbfounded. Ethan is really smooth. After some small talk, Ethan smiled. That's right, but Assistant Warren, I heard from Zane that the director needs some time regarding the dedicated line. Our company is in an expansion phase, so this matter is quite urgent. Warren thought for a moment, leaned in closer, and lowered his voice. Mr. Ford, the leadership has their considerations. This isn't a small matter, and other companies are lined up too. The implication was that in Director Lawrence's eyes, other companies had priority. Why they had priority was obvious. Ethan nodded in realization. It seemed Arctic Systems hadn't greased the wheels at the Bureau beforehand, and trying to build that relationship now would likely be difficult. Looks like he'd have to find another way. Ethan mused for a moment, then said, I see. Assistant Warren, I understand. Sorry to have troubled you with this. Warren hesitated. Mr. Ford, I'm really sorry. I can't be of much help here. Ethan smiled. No worries, Assistant Warren. We'll think of another way. By the way, I heard the Communications Bureau falls under Deputy Mayor Bowen's jurisdiction, right? Warren was surprised. That is correct. Mr. Ford, you mean? Ethan chuckled. That makes it easy then. With that, Ethan dialed a number right on the spot. Hello, Lil Ford. Why are you calling me all of a sudden? James Bowen's laughing voice came from the other end. Ethan laughed. Hey, Deputy Mayor, I'm just calling to pay my respects. Ha ha, come off it. You never visit unless you need something. What's up? Bowen saw right through him. As expected of a leader, sharp as a tack. Ethan didn't beat around the bush and roughly explained the situation at the Communications Bureau. After listening, Bowen chuckled. Lawrence likes pulling these stunts, sitting in that seat and not thinking about serving businesses properly. He's crossing the line a bit. All right, I got it. I'll give him a call in a bit. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, they hung up. Assistant Warren stared with wide eyes, asking in shock, Mr. Ford, did you just call Deputy Mayor Bowen? Ethan grinned. Yeah. A massive wave of shock crashed through Warren's heart. He never imagined a company executive would have such a good relationship with James Bowen. He had truly failed to recognize a titan. Warren's expression changed, and he quickly tried to return the gifts to Ethan. Mr. Ford, you should have said so earlier. I can't accept these gifts. I can't. You keep them. I'll go speak to Director Lawrence right now. But Ethan waved his hand. Hey, who takes back a gift once given? Assistant Warren, just accept it with peace of mind. Warren's face instantly bloomed with an incredibly enthusiastic smile. He bowed and ushered Ethan to sit. Oh, Mr. Ford, you are truly too kind. Mr. Ford, please sit for a moment. I'll go make you some tea. With that, Warren turned and left to make tea. Zach and the others watched as Warren transformed into a completely different person. Just a moment ago, he was putting on airs, and now he was addressing Ethan with honorifics and fawning over him. This guy's face changed way too fast. Zane asked in amazement, Mr. Ford, do you really know the deputy mayor? Ethan spread his hands and laughed. Would I fake it? Zane gave a thumbs up in admiration. Mr. Ford, you're awesome. Now maybe things would turn around. A short while later, Assistant Warren returned with tea, followed by another person, Director Lawrence. Oh my, Mr. Ford, why did you come personally? Lawrence rushed forward with a warm smile to shake Ethan's hand, acting like long-lost friends. This attitude was a complete 180 from before. Actually, Ethan didn't know him at all, but Lawrence acted like they had known each other for ages. Of course, Ethan knew the reason. He smiled. Director Lawrence, hello. It's an honor to meet you for the first time. Lawrence had cold sweat on his forehead. He wiped it away and gave a dry laugh. No, the honor is mine. Just now, the deputy mayor called me personally. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known you came down here yourself. I'm truly sorry. Lawrence naturally hadn't expected a small matter like a dedicated line to alert James Bowen. When he heard Bowen asking about it personally, he was startled. Hearing Bowen mention that Ethan was the head of West Ford Group shocked him even more. If he didn't handle this well, he'd definitely be reprimanded by the higher-ups. So he rushed over to meet Ethan personally to prevent Ethan from taking his complaint further up the chain. Come, Mr. Ford, please sit. Everyone, please sit. Have some tea first. Lawrence greeted them enthusiastically. Zach and the others were a bit awkward at his sudden warmth, but seeing Ethan sit calmly, they followed suit. Once everyone was seated, Ethan looked at Lawrence and asked with a smile, Director Lawrence, regarding Arctic Systems' dedicated line. I heard it might be delayed. Lawrence played dumb immediately. Was there such a thing? No. Assistant Warren, did you misunderstand me? I mean, it might not be instant. It can't be done in 1 or 2 days, but maybe 3 or 4. How did you convey my meaning? Warren froze, but quickly realized he had to take the fall. Yes, Director. I might have misunderstood your instructions. Warren quickly bowed. Ethan sipped his tea, watching their performance, knowing exactly what was happening. Director Lawrence, can it really be done in 3 or 4 days? Is the approval process that fast? I heard the Bureau was short-handed. Lawrence immediately turned serious. Mr. Ford, rest assured, I will personally oversee the approval. I'll communicate directly with the other departments. We can definitely expedite it. Our Bureau doesn't have many people, true, but we must be servants to enterprise. Even if we work overtime, we must do a good job. Efficiency for businesses is our service goal. His righteous words made Zach and the others in the conference room feel incredulous. Director Lawrence's ideological level had risen so high in just a few short hours. Ethan stood up and proactively extended his hand, smiling. Then thank you very much, Director Lawrence. Much appreciated. Lawrence quickly stood up to shake hands, laughing. Haha, you're welcome. It's only what we should do. Then I'll leave this matter to you, Director. Saying this, Ethan took another gift bag from under the table and handed it over. Lawrence repeatedly declined. Oh, Mr. Ford, no need. You don't have to be so polite. Ethan said seriously, Director Lawrence, you're helping us with a big favor. This small thing is nothing. Don't worry, it's just company welfare perks. We can't use them. Lawrence glanced inside. McAllen and Parliaments. Not ordinary gifts at all. But seeing Ethan insist, he stopped refusing. After accepting it, he smiled. All right, Mr. Ford, how about we have dinner together tonight? There was anticipation in his eyes. Ethan was someone who could get James Bowen to intervene personally. That meant their relationship wasn't ordinary. If he could connect with Ethan, maybe he could move up the ladder in the future. But Ethan politely declined. Director Lawrence, we have other matters to attend to this time, so tonight probably won't work. Another day, I'll take you out, huh? Ethan saw through his intentions, but he really couldn't have this meal. If Lawrence tried to climb the ladder and asked for special favors, it would be hard to refuse. So, better to just skip the meal and save the trouble. Disappointment flashed in Lawrence's eyes, but he smiled anyway. All right then, Mr. Ford, you stay busy. Let's meet another time. Next, they discussed the specific details of opening the dedicated line. Lawrence patted his chest, guaranteeing the approval process would be finished as soon as possible. Only then did Zach and the others relax. After chatting for another half hour, Zach and the group stood to leave. Lawrence personally escorted Ethan, Zach, and the others downstairs. Watching Ethan drive away, Lawrence wiped the sweat from his forehead. Finally handled that. Director, what's the deal with that, Mr. Ford? I saw him call Deputy Mayor Bowen right on the spot. Assistant Warren asked in a low voice. Lawrence mused for a moment, guessing maybe he's a nephew or relative of the deputy mayor. But, regardless, it shows Ethan has significant influence behind him. With someone watching over him from above, he can thrive in Chicago. It's best not to offend someone like that, understand? Warren nodded repeatedly. Yes, Director. I understand. Ethan, let's go check out your company now. Inside the car, Zach said curiously. He wanted to see with his own eyes what the company running 361 PC Safety Manager looked like. Sure, I'll take you for a tour, Ethan smiled. The two cars sped along the road and soon arrived at the Metro Tower. Zane looked up at the massive 45-story structure, shocked. Mr. Ford, your company is in this place? This can't be cheap, right? Arctic Systems currently didn't dare rent in such a CBD skyscraper. The rent was too high. Ethan smiled faintly. It's all right. Not too expensive. Not expensive? How much per square foot? Zane asked, stunned. Ethan walked forward, replying casually, it went up this year, but it's only about $2 per square foot a month. Zane's mouth twitched. That wasn't expensive. That price was considered premium office space, even in New York. It wasn't that Arctic Systems couldn't afford it, but the company was still in a phase of cutting costs and didn't want to spend capital on high rent. Ethan led the three into the building and went straight to West Ford Group. Arriving at the 30th floor, as soon as the elevator opened, Zach was shocked by the scene before him. Before his eyes was an incredibly spacious lobby entrance, with West Ford Group emblazoned on the wall. Just this lobby area had at least 2,000 square feet of open space. Zach's eyes went round with surprise. Ethan, is this your company? Making the lobby this big, how much space is left for offices? Why design it like this? Ethan waved his hand, smiling casually. It doesn't matter. I rented the whole floor. Zach? Zane? Danny? Zach was a bit dumbfounded. Ethan rented the entire floor? How much was the rent? That was too extravagant. Just looking at the lobby, it was luxurious. Although the decoration was simple, leaving so much empty space was a different kind of luxury. Ethan, you're awesome. A whole floor, that's a huge move. Zach exclaimed in admiration. It's okay. Ethan smiled slightly. The group entered the main doors. Zach saw two young, beautiful girls at the massive reception desk. Oval faces, big eyes, very eye-catching. He took one look and couldn't help blushing, averting his gaze. Good afternoon, President. The two receptionists bowed and greeted. Afternoon. You guys carry on. I'm showing some friends around. Ethan nodded kindly. Yes, President. The receptionist responded in unison. Zach stole another glance. His front desk was really big and white. No, the scale of the reception was comparable to a listed company. It must be great to work in a company like this. He muttered to himself as he followed Ethan into the group's internal office area. The office area was spacious, with rows of clean and tidy cubicles. These were large cubicles. A single one was twice the size of those at Arctic Systems, so it felt particularly roomy. Most employees were busy working and didn't notice Ethan. It wasn't until an admin staff member walked by with a file and greeted Ethan that the other employees noticed, turning their heads to look. "Hello, Mr. Ford. Mr. Ford. Hello, boss." Ethan smiled and nodded, waving to everyone. Zach, however, saw the light in the employee's eyes and felt that Ethan was the soul of this company. Just then, Leo Zhang, the general manager of West Ford Tech, ran over quickly. "President, perfect timing. I was just looking for you. West Ford Gaming's Legend of the Dragon has started its internal beta." Leo laughed happily. Before the new year, this game was already in the finishing stages. Now it had entered internal testing, progressing rapidly. As long as the internal test went well, it could be released to the market. Hearing the good news, Ethan laughed. "That was fast. You and the West Ford Gaming developers deserve credit. Come on, show me." Zane and the other two were stunned. Game beta. West Ford Group makes games too? Wasn't a company specializing in 361 PC Safety Manager? Truly amazing. "Ethan, your company does game business too?" "The game market has good prospects right now, but it's not very profitable," Zach asked, puzzled. There were quite a few small games on the market, but basically none were making money. It was a thankless task. Why would West Ford Group choose to develop a game? Ethan turned back, looking mysterious. Zach, this game isn't just any game. You'll see in a moment. This game of ours should be the first large-scale MMORPG in the country." "What kind?" Zach paused. "RPG online game? That's a huge project." Developing this kind of game was usually something only large game companies did. What was unique about this one? Full of doubts, Zach and the others followed Ethan to West Ford Tech. West Ford Tech was the only subsidiary merged into the West Ford Group office, but also had a large separate area. After passing a long corridor and turning a corner, Zach suddenly felt the view open up. There was a huge floor-to-ceiling window facing south. Inside, 200 to 300 people were working simultaneously. It was noisier than the front, with staff shuttling back and forth. Directly ahead was a massive screen wall displaying various development projects, along with the main person in charge of each project. Below each project was a progress bar showing the current status. This giant screen was visually impactful, leaving Zach and the others dumbfounded. "My God!" Zach's mouth hung open, unable to close. His gaze moved down from the giant screen to scan the scene of hundreds of people working together. It was something he had never seen before. "Ethan, are all these tech staff?" Zach asked blankly. Ethan nodded and smiled. "Just a portion of the tech staff belonging to the subsidiary West Ford Tech. That includes the developers for 361 PC Safety Manager, as well as developers for other projects like games and West Ford e-commerce." Hearing this, Zane suddenly latched onto a keyword. "E-commerce. Mr. Ford, you're doing e-commerce too?" Ethan shrugged and smiled. "Yeah, that's also a subsidiary business." At this, Danny tugged on Zach and Zane's sleeves, motioning for them to look at the project list on the screen. Zach subconsciously looked closer at the words on the screen. Staring carefully, his expression suddenly changed. "West Ford E-commerce Platform Project. West Ford Electronics Legend of the Dragon Project. West Ford Electronics CRM Management System Project. West Ford Logistics System Project." Projects were densely listed. If you didn't look carefully, they were easy to miss. But seeing the projects listed, just from the names, Zach felt these projects were extraordinary. They were all the most advanced internet application projects of the time. His eyes went round with disbelief. Is this the layout of West Ford Group? Not only was Zach astonished, but even the usually steady Zane was stunned. Zane looked at the screen, then at Ethan, a massive wave crashing through his mind. "Mr. Ford is far more formidable than I imagined. To control a group enterprise like this, how could he be an ordinary person?" Ethan's image instantly grew several times taller in his heart. "Let's go check out Legend of the Dragon and play a bit," Ethan said calmly, noting the expressions of the three men. Bringing them to tour the company. The goal was already mostly achieved. Danny's thoughts might still be unclear, but Zach and Zane were definitely winnable. The group then walked to the Legend of the Dragon project team. A row of machines for internal testing was ready, with employees testing different characters and functions back and forth. "Hello, President." A young male employee stood up to greet him. Ethan nodded and smiled. "I heard the internal beta started. I came to play." The young man grinned excitedly. "Yes, it's in beta. Please, President." Others made way. Ethan invited the three to sit down and play the game first. Zach loved games to begin with, so he sat down excitedly and started moving his character. He played a warrior. He saw other classes on the screen, including assassin, mage, and Taoist. Each class had different skills and equipment. Killing monsters in the wild earned gold coins and randomly dropped gear. The excellent feel and cutting-edge combat experience hooked him immediately. He couldn't help running outside the city to grind monsters and level up. Monsters also dropped materials like diamond stones and dark iron, which could be used to synthesize and upgrade weapons. Within an hour, he had basically figured out the gameplay and started upgrading his gear to become stronger. Stimulated by the constant monster killing and item drops, he completely forgot he was in a company office, unknowingly immersing himself in the game. Holy crap, this mini-boss is tough. I can't beat him. Come team up and kill him. Zack shouted, asking for support from others. Zack, stop playing. Let people do their work. Zane laughed. Zack turned around and realized that quite a few employees had gathered behind him, watching him play. Saw thee. Accidentally got addicted. My bad, my bad. Zack scratched his head, laughing sheepishly. Leo Zhang waved his hand. It's fine. Mister. Bell plays well, got the hang of it so fast. Zack chuckled. I played plenty of games before. Picked it up once I touched it, not hard. But, I have to say, this game is incredibly fun. I dare say, this is the most fun game I've ever played, bar none. A look of pride appeared on Leo's face. You flatter us. But indeed, there are currently no competitors for this game. This is also thanks to President Ford's foresight. The entire underlying mechanism and gameplay were designed by him. Zack and Zane were shocked, turning their heads to look at Ethan in surprise. Zack asked in amazement, Ethan, you know game design too. Ethan spread his hands and laughed. Is it hard? Huh. Zack, Ethan, you're a beast. You think everyone could do that? Zane twitched his mouth. Yeah, Mr. Ford, didn't expect you to have this talent. Admirable. Ethan rubbed his fingers and smiled. All right, stop flattering me. What do you guys think of the game? Danny took a deep breath and said seriously, Mr. Ford, I have a feeling this game will definitely explode. The gameplay is fantastic. Every time gear drops from a monster, I'm happy for a long time, and I look forward to the next better drop. How should I put it? The more you play, the more addictive it gets. Zack nodded in strong agreement. Danny's right. This game is really easy to get addicted to. I played for over an hour without realizing it. This gameplay is novel and interesting. The mechanics are awesome. Zane thought for a moment and smiled. Mr. Ford, how do you plan to monetize this game? I saw a module in the backpack called gold ingots. Gold ingots are different from gold coins. Do you have to pay for those? Ethan laughed. Worthy of an operations guy, spotted at a glance. Correct. Gold ingots are indeed obtained through recharging. They can buy materials or weapons and equipment. Upgrading gear also requires them. And monsters won't drop gold ingots. Besides recharging, whaling, there's no other way. Hearing the term whaling, Kujin, Zane laughed dumbly. That adjective is really fitting. Whaling. Ethan nodded and continued. Besides recharging for gold ingots, playing the game requires buying game time cards. It's a subscription model. Players need to buy time to play. Apart from these two, there are siege modes and group battle mechanics in the game. There's plenty of room for events. Fire flashed in Danny's eyes. Brilliant. Then the revenue capacity of this game is definitely good. He could already imagine how popular this game would be. As long as the player count went up, the subscription plus cash shop model would be a massive profit machine. The revenue created would definitely be several times higher than Arctic Systems. Ethan stood up, checked his watch, and smiled. It's getting late, quitting time. Let's go. I'll take you to dinner. Okay. Zack and the others stood up. At that moment, they saw the employees in the office stand up en masse, pack their things, and head straight out. See you tomorrow, President. We're off, President. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow morning, Mr. Ford. Employees greeted Ethan one after another, then left the office. Ethan responded warmly to each of them. Before long, the office that had held nearly 300 people had only a few left, instantly becoming quiet. Zane watched this scene in disbelief, then checked the time. It was exactly 6 p.m. They got off work right at 6 p.m. The boss was still here, and they just left. Aside from government jobs, he had never seen a private company leave promptly at 6 p.m. Mr. Ford, do you mandate a 6 p.m. finish here? Zane asked, puzzled. Ethan countered, if not 6 p.m., then when? We're 9 to 6 here, with an hour break in the middle. Standard 8-hour workday. Of course, there's a shift that starts in the afternoon and works into the evening, also 8 hours. Zack paused. Then what about the projects? Don't you work overtime to rush them? Leo Zhang leaned over and smiled. Mr. Bell, illegal overtime here gets you points deducted and pay docked. If the project isn't done, we continue tomorrow. What? What did you say? Overtime is illegal, and you get your pay docked. Zach was bewildered. It was the first time he had ever heard of getting paid docked for working overtime. What kind of heavenly company was this? The benefits were too good. Ethan turned to Leo Zhang. Leo, once the internal beta ends and before the public beta starts, draft a marketing plan with West Ford Gaming. Make the public beta marketing as vibrant as possible. You need to combine it with 361 PC Manager to get the game's name out there first. Leo nodded. Yes, President. I'll discuss it with Manager Han. Ethan smiled. Ha, good. All right, it's quitting time. Let's eat together. It's rare for friends from Arctic Systems to visit. Zach is a tech guy too. You two definitely have common topics. Leo said modestly. Yes. I need to learn from Mr. Bell. Zach said straightforwardly. Hey, what learning? Mutual exchange. The group left work and found an old Cantonese restaurant near the Metro Tower for dinner. In the private room, wine and food were served. Ethan, Zach, and the others chatted and laughed, exchanging toasts. After eating and drinking for over half an hour, Zach, who couldn't hold his liquor well, was already flushed and bleary-eyed. When the alcohol hit, Zach's temper became even more direct. He raised his glass to Ethan. Come, Ethan, I toast you. If not for you, Arctic Systems probably wouldn't be profitable yet. Come, cheers. Ethan didn't want to get him drunk, so he shook his head and smiled. All right, Zach, just a sip. Drink slowly, talk slowly. Saying this, Ethan clinked glasses with him. Zach took a sip and sighed heavily with emotion. Ethan, speaking from the heart, I admire you. Truly admire you. At your age, to manage a company to this level. You can't find many like you in the whole country. Zach Bell, don't admire many people in this life, but you, Ethan, are number one. Ethan smiled modestly. All right, stop putting me on a pedestal. Success depends on everyone working together. Just like at Arctic Systems, me, you, Zane, Dan, we all get along well, so things naturally work out. Zach and Zane nodded repeatedly. Danny, however, paused, feeling there was a hidden meaning in Ethan's words. It felt like Ethan was pointing at something. Getting along well at Arctic Systems. Did that include Matt and Xavier? Just then, Zach's phone rang. Zach looked at the screen and laughed. Haha, it's Matt calling. He answered immediately. Hey, Matt, what's up? Zach, are you guys done with business? When are you coming back to New York? Matt Thorne's voice came from the other end. Zach replied with a laugh. Matt, don't worry, it's handled. But it's all thanks to Ethan's help. Otherwise, it would have been tough. After he finished, Ethan treated us to dinner. We're heading back to New York tomorrow noon. On the other end, Matt fell silent for a moment before asking, Oh, Mr. Ford is treating you to dinner? Yeah, we're drinking right now. Ha, Zach said happily. Would I lie to you? Here, Ethan, take the phone. Zach stood up and handed the phone to Ethan. Ethan took the phone and said cheerfully, Good evening, Matt. Matt's voice also carried a laugh. Hey, Mr. Ford, you're too polite. Sorry to trouble you with hosting them. Ethan laughed. What trouble? No trouble at all. We're all brothers working together. Zach, Zane, and Danny are very happy today. Saying this, Ethan looked at the three of them and asked, Zach, am I right? Zach and Zane shouted, right? The scene was full of laughter. But to Matt on the other end, this laughter was piercing, making him uncomfortable. He hadn't expected Zach and the others to be so close to Ethan. A sense of crisis rose in his heart. Matt said flatly, Is that so? Well, have fun, but don't get drunk. Zach and the guys have to come back to New York tomorrow. There's work to do. Ethan chuckled lightly. Don't worry, Matt. Leave them to me. If they get drunk, I'll send someone to drive them back tomorrow. Mr. Ford is certainly thoughtful. A cold light flashed in Matt's eyes. He felt that Ethan was blatantly trying to poach Zach and the others. Had Zach, Zane, and Danny already leaned toward Ethan? Although Matt thought it unlikely, he felt anxious and worried. Just playing the host, Ethan smiled. With that, Ethan handed the phone back to Zach. After chatting a few more sentences with Matt, Zach hung up. Come, let's keep drinking. Zach raised his glass invitingly. Ethan narrowed his eyes and raised his glass too, already pondering Matt's thoughts. Matt probably wasn't feeling too good right now, was he? New York, Laurel Heights, inside Matt Thorne's home. The study was brightly lit. Matt sat in a chair, deep in thought, his finger tapping rhythmically on the desk. Knock, knock. A knock sounded at the door, and then it opened. A beautiful woman with short hair, wearing a lace nightgown, appeared in the doorway. Honey, aren't you going to wash up and sleep? The woman asked with a purse smile. Hearing the voice, Matt looked up at his wife, Judy, masking the worry in his eyes with a forced smile. In a bit, husband and wife were of one mind. Judy naturally sensed Matt's worry. She walked over slowly, stood behind him, and massaged his shoulders. Is something bothering you lately? Isn't Arctic Systems on the right track now? Isn't it profitable? What are you still worried about? Matt enjoyed his wife's massage, exhaled, and said calmly, "That's true, but this was exchanged through a VM agreement. Ethan Ford is indeed capable, but if we just let him take the majority of the equity." Hearing this, Judy suddenly understood what her husband was worried about. "We had no choice due to the pressure of survival back then. Now that operations are on track, I think we should find time to talk to Ethan. He has merit, but this company is our blood and sweat after all. Handing it over like this, even I wouldn't be willing. I wouldn't be resigned to it." Matt felt comforted. At least his wife understood him. "Yes, feels like I need to talk to Ethan. I can sound him out. If he could take a step back, it would be a good thing for everyone," Matt said calmly. Judy smiled faintly. "Don't overthink it. You have the support of Zach and Xavier in the company. Besides you, who can run Arctic Systems?" Matt narrowed his eyes, thinking carefully. "That's true, but tonight Ethan treated Zach and the other two to dinner, and they seemed quite happy." Judy paused, sensing this was the real reason for her husband's distraction tonight. If Matt wanted to control Arctic Systems, he couldn't do it without the support of the other founding partners like Zach. If Zach and the others turned to support Ethan, it would definitely affect Matt's voice in Arctic Systems. "Honey, are you worried about Zach and guys?" Judy hinted, not daring to say it outright. After all, Matt and Zach were partners who started the business together. Matt pursed his lips and smiled. "It's fine. Zach knows where he stands. Besides, Zach's been with me for so long. Our relationship is different." Judy nodded, but still couldn't help saying, "When it comes to interest besides family, few people are reliable." Matt laughed, patted her hand, and comforted her. "All right, don't worry. I have a plan. The future of Arctic Systems will still be in my hands. It can only be in my hands. It's late, go rest first." Judy responded and turned to leave. After Judy left, Matt's face gradually darkened. He just didn't want his wife to worry. In reality, he had developed a deep fear of Ethan. If Zach, Zane, and the others sided with Ethan inside Arctic Systems, he would easily fall into a passive position. He never dared to gamble on human nature, to gamble that Zach was reliable. His finger tapped on the table one by one, 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. After a long time, he suddenly stopped moving, sat up straight, a trace of coldness flashing in his eyes. It's time to kick Ethan out. The next day at noon, Zach had just returned to Arctic Systems and put down his backpack, ready to work. "Zach, come here for a second." Matt walked over and smiled at him. Zach was a bit surprised. He hadn't even warmed his seat after getting back, and there was a new task, but he stood up and responded, "Sure." Zach followed Matt to the office, where Zane, Danny, and the other partners were already gathered. "Ah, come, Zach. Hard work this trip. Sit, met kritit." The 5 partners of Arctic Systems sat around the tea table, brewing and drinking tea. Matt poured a cup for Zach and smiled. "Zach, we've known each other for almost 5 years, right?" "About that. Time flies." Zach scratched his head, emotional. Matt sighed. "Yeah, time really flies. In the blink of an eye, it's been so long. Our company has been running for almost 2 years now. Last year, we took many detours, but this year, thanks to everyone's efforts, the company is developing better and better. It's all thanks to you guys, especially Zach. As our tech guru, you're the biggest hero for refining and launching IceQ step by step." The others nodded, expressing agreement. Indeed, without Zach's skills and the tech team he led, there would be no IceQ product. Zach chuckled simply, repeatedly being modest. No, it's everyone's credit. Actually, the company's turnaround is mostly thanks to Ethan's brilliant operational strategy. Once the zone opened and IceQ Premium went online, our cash revenue shot up. Zach told the truth, but Xavier gave a disdainful sneer and didn't reply. Matt's face was uneven, and he didn't speak, secretly glancing at the others. Zach continued, "I think Arctic Systems can definitely enter the fast lane in the future. With profit, survival isn't a big problem. We have to take aggressive expansion measures to fill the blank of internet social communication." Ethan was right. Internet startups have to race to enclose land quickly. In the current era, traffic really is king. With traffic, there will be no shortage of monetization opportunities later. Then Zach shared some of the things he talked about with Ethan while drinking last night. But before he could finish, Matt raised his hand to interrupt him, smiling. "Ethan indeed has exceptional qualities. I understand what he said. However, specific company operations are another matter. Ethan has made some contributions to our company, and I'm actually very grateful to him." Matt spoke words of gratitude, but his tone excluded Ethan from Arctic Systems. Xavier nodded, Zane frowned slightly, and Danny acted calm. pretending not to hear. Only Zach really thought Matt was praising and thanking Ethan, laughing happily. "Ah, yeah, Matt, you're right." Matt smiled slightly and continued. "Ethan invested money and did work, but he's still far from the annual revenue level of 10 million. Relying solely on membership income won't cut it. Regarding the VM agreement, he probably won't be able to fulfill it. I was thinking, rather than letting him be disappointed, it's better to just give him some extra shares and forget about the VM agreement." Zane, Danny, and Zach were stunned. Only Xavier remained impassive, seemingly already aware of Matt's idea. Zach asked in astonishment, "Isn't the company on the right track recently? 10 million revenue is difficult, but not impossible to reach. If we talk to Ethan like this, will he accept it?" Zach really thought Matt was considering Ethan's feelings and seemed surprised. Zane, however, heard the true meaning in Matt's words, and his expression changed slightly. Matt was trying to kick Ethan out of the company management. Matt Thorne glanced sideways at Xavier Yale, then turned his gaze to Zach Bell. "Zach, this is the most reasonable solution for Ethan. He'll agree to it." Zach Bell chuckled, shaking his head. "Come on, Matt. We can't make decisions for Ethan. Whether the VM agreement is met or not, keeping him in management is definitely a net positive for the company." Xavier, however, interjected with a dark tone. "Zach, I honestly think it's better if Ethan doesn't stay in management. He's better suited as a silent shareholder." Zach paused, stunned, and instinctively shot back. "Xavier, seriously? With Ethan's skills, he's perfectly qualified to be one of our partners. The only reason this company turned a profit is because of him." Xavier kept his face cold and replied calmly. "With Ethan's ambition, do you really think he'd be satisfied just being a partner? Besides, strictly speaking, he's not really one of us. Zach, think about it. If Ethan wins this bet and fulfills the VM agreement, will there be any room left for us in this company?" Zach was taken aback, stammering a defense for Ethan. "Xavier, that's a pretty narrow way of looking at things. Even if the agreement is met, Ethan isn't that kind of guy. Shubby's not. You can know a person's face, but not their heart. Zach, don't be so naive." "Xavier, what the hell is that supposed to mean?" Zach asked, getting angry. Matt Thorne suddenly spoke up. "Zach, Xavier has a point. Think about how much we went through, how much we suffered to build Arctic Systems. Arctic Systems is like our child." Zach turned to Matt in shock. "So, Matt, are you saying you don't want Ethan involved in the actual management? You want to freeze him out?" Matt remained silent, his lack of response serving as a confirmation. Zach frowned, pressing him further. "Matt, isn't that a little too cold-blooded? A little bit. Biting the hand that feeds us. Ethan gave us investment when we were desperate. He helped Arctic Systems turn a profit, and this is how we treat him." Zane King hesitated for a moment before chiming in. "Yeah, isn't this going a bit too far?" He didn't entirely agree with Matt's approach. It felt wrong. But looking at it from Matt's perspective, he could guess the reasoning. If Matt didn't do this, Arctic Systems might end up belonging to Ethan Ford, not Matt Thorne. It all depended on where you sat. For Zane, it didn't matter who led Arctic Systems, as long as the company grew and made money. Judging by the last marketing campaign, Ethan's abilities were clearly on par with, if not superior to, Matt's. He could even generate real revenue. Plus, Ethan was already running a successful group of companies. Zane felt that perhaps Ethan leading Arctic Systems was actually the better path. So, after a moment of hesitation, he spoke up for Ethan. "There's no too far in business. As I see it, he's bound to fail the VM agreement anyway. We'll give him some stock as compensation, and that should be enough. Zane, Arctic Systems needs to stay in our hands," Matt said, looking at Zane earnestly. At this point, the cards were halfway on the table. Matt simply didn't want Ethan to fulfill the VM agreement. If he did, Ethan would gain control of Arctic Systems. And the key to that agreement was revenue. As long as Matt interfered, the target would definitely not be met. It must not be met. Matt had already prepared a backup plan. Calling them here today was just to gauge their attitudes. Zane's expression shifted, and he lowered his voice. "That may be true, but I still think Ethan's skills are valuable." This was his way of saying he didn't support freezing Ethan out and wanted him to continue participating in company affairs. Zach Bell nodded repeatedly, his face serious. "Exactly. Ethan has a ton of resources. If he brings those resources to Arctic Systems, he could absolutely put the company on the fast track. Anyway, I don't care what you guys think. I support Ethan staying in management." Zach spoke with firm conviction. He was acting entirely out of public spirit, thinking solely of the company's best interests. He believed Ethan's involvement was a huge benefit. A cold glint flashed in Matt's eyes, but on the surface, he kept his friendly demeanor. "Zach, I understand how you feel. Let's table this for now and discuss it later. Xavier, however, couldn't hold back. He slapped the table. Zach, you're being confused. Aren't you afraid that after all our hard work creating IceQ, we'll end up handing it over to someone else? If you let Ethan in, what happens to us? I'm asking you, what happens to us? Zach glared back. Whatever happens now, happens then. Besides, we all voted unanimously on that agreement with Ethan. Now that Ethan has boosted revenue and found a profitability model, you want to kick him to the curb? Just for your own little slice of the pie. You'd ignore the company's future? Xavier, I didn't think you were that kind of person. Xavier stood up angrily, slapping the table again and pointing at Zach's nose. You bastard. Am I doing this just for myself? I'm doing this for everyone. If that agreement goes through, Zach, won't your share of the equity get diluted too? Zach slammed his hand on the table and stood up as well. So be it. At least I'm a man of my word. What? What is that supposed to mean? Xavier Shota. The two began to argue heatedly. The other three stood up to intervene, pulling them apart and calming them down. After a long while, Matt finally spoke to the group. All right. Let's not discuss this anymore. We'll talk about it later. Meeting adjourned. With Matt's dismissal, the others left one by one, except for Xavier, who stayed behind. That bastard Zach. If he doesn't want to share, he shouldn't drag me down with him. Xavier said indignantly. From the beginning, he couldn't bear to part with his shares, especially now that Arctic Systems was on the right track with unlimited potential. The shares he held would be worth a fortune in the future, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. Matt replied calmly, all right, no need to get angry. Zach and Zane, maybe they aren't suitable to stay in the company anymore. As for Danny, I'll observe him a bit longer. After this meeting, he could no longer trust Zach Bell. Hearing this, Xavier immediately understood. Matt intended to freeze out Zach and Zane as well. Matt currently held 40% of the equity, plus Summit Capital and United Telecom held another 40%. The two venture capital firms didn't manage operations and generally followed Matt's lead. So, Arctic Systems was still completely under Matt's control. As long as they held a shareholders meeting, they could freeze out Zach, Zane, and Ethan, preventing them from participating in company affairs. As long as the VM agreement wasn't met, Arctic Systems would still belong to Matt. Xavier asked in a low voice then, Matt, what about the VM agreement? Based on the current revenue trend, it's less than $1 million a month. Although it won't hit the target, Ethan might have other methods. Matt smiled faintly. If I say it won't be met, then it must not be met. The company is in our hands. Whether it's met or not, isn't that up to us? With that, Matt stood up, walked to the landline, and made a call. Shortly after, the office door opened, and a middle-aged man in a suit walked in. Matt, you asked for me? Luke, the current market environment isn't great. We need to cut costs. You're the finance director. You need to plan accordingly. Some company expenses are unnecessary. Matt paused, smiling slightly. For example, expanding the technical staff and adding servers. Oh, and to prevent server failure, tell the technical department to shut down a portion of the servers for maintenance. The man in the suit bowed slightly and smiled. Yes, Matt, I understand. Xavier's eyes lit up. He finally understood Matt's strategy. Ethan Ford was going to lose this round for sure. Xavier, I'm going to head over to Summit Capital. If anything comes up at the company, call me directly, Matt said, standing up with a smile. Also, next Monday, I plan to convene a shareholders meeting. Prepare the notices for all shareholders. Xavier stood up as well, nodding. Sure thing, Matt. He guessed Matt was going to lobby the two investment shareholders to bring more votes to his side. Convening a shareholders meeting meant the process of freezing Ethan out was about to begin. Matt took 2 steps, then suddenly turned back to Xavier. Xavier, if you have time, do some work on Zach and the others. Remember, we are the true partners of Arctic Systems. Xavier looked troubled, but agreed. All right, I'll try my best. But you know Zach's temper. He's stubborn. It might not work. Matt smiled. Just do what you can. With that, Matt turned and walked out of the office. Meanwhile, in the Arctic Systems break room, Zach Bell gulped down a large cup of water, panting slightly. What are Xavier and the others thinking? Is it just for the equity in their hands? Zane King shushed him, whispering, What do you think? You're a tech guy, so you don't mind. But Matt is the major shareholder. Do you think he'd let Ethan take control of Arctic Systems? Zach was stunned, then argued. But we could all be partners together. Isn't it good to grow the company together? Zane shook his head, glancing at him. Have you ever seen 2 tigers share one mountain? But Matt agreed to the VM agreement. Did he plan from the start never to share power with Ethan? Zach asked speculatively. Zane sighed and remained silent. which confirmed Zach's suspicion. Zach fell into silence as well. After a long while, Zach asked in a deep voice, Matt only planned to use Ethan to get through the company's crisis. Zane replied, non-committally, maybe. That single word exploded in Zach's mind like a thunderclap. In his impression, Matt Thorne had always been a man of integrity and sincerity. That was one of the reasons he had always followed him. But this revelation caused Matt's image to collapse in his heart. He couldn't accept it. Seeing the change in his expression, Zane patted him on the shoulder comfortingly and whispered, Zach, you're a tech guy. Your heart is in the technology. But sometimes, the human heart is more complex than code. Zach remained silent, refilled his water, and turned to leave the break room. A week later, Monday morning, Ethan, Ford, and Wayne, Tank, Turner headed to San Jose to attend the Arctic Systems shareholders meeting. Just as the two arrived downstairs at the company, they ran into Zach Bell buying breakfast at a roadside stall. Ethan stood by the car and called out to Zach, Zach, just getting breakfast now. Zach paid the vendor, turned around, saw Ethan, and smiled. Yeah, you're here early, Ethan. Saying that, Zach ran over with his breakfast, holding out a bag. Ethan, want a steamed bun? No thanks, you eat it. Ethan waved his hand, then asked, Zach, Matt's suddenly calling a shareholders meeting. It's not just for a work report, is it? Zach hesitated for a moment, then said, ideally, I don't really know either. He looked like he wanted to say something, but stopped. Seeing this, Ethan narrowed his eyes and smiled, deciding not to press the issue. Haha, maybe Matt has some adjustments to make. By the way, the marketing plan I made last month doesn't seem to have been implemented. The farm heist event. Zach thought for a moment and whispered, Ethan, the tech department is busy developing the new version of IceQ. The testing department says there are a lot of bugs to fix. We're short-staffed. Ethan looked surprised. Short-staffed? Why not hire more people? Matt says the external situation is bad, so we need to save money and just try to survive first, Zach replied. A sharp glint flashed in Ethan's eyes. He nodded. I see. All right, I get it. Let's go. We'll head up together. The three of them went upstairs to Arctic Systems. Zach went to his office to eat breakfast, while Ethan and Tank went to the lounge to make coffee. Ethan, what's going on with Arctic Systems? They don't seem in a rush to expand at all, Tank asked in a low voice. Ethan put down his coffee, his voice calm. What other reason could there be? They're not in a rush to make money. At least not within this year. Tank realized instantly. They don't want to fulfill the VAM agreement. Ethan nodded, stirring his coffee with a faint smile. Yeah, I anticipated this. If Matt actively cooperated to fulfill the agreement, that would be against human nature. He's not that altruistic. Tank asked urgently. Ethan, what do we do? If Matt sabotages it, won't our target of $10 million in revenue fail? If the bet fails, we have to invest another $1 million. Ethan sneered. Let's wait and see. If Matt really takes me for a fool, he'll be the only one looking stupid in the end. From the moment he made the deal with Matt, he had envisioned this scenario. To succeed in anything, you have to consider the worst-case scenario. If Matt truly cared about Arctic Systems over his own interests, Ethan would have respected him. Arctic Systems could have existed with Matt holding most of the equity and his partners remaining. But if Matt wouldn't give up control and intentionally let the agreement fail for personal gain, then he couldn't blame Ethan for being ruthless. An hour later, Gary Fisher from Summit Capital and Steve Foster from United Telecom arrived at Arctic Systems. The shareholders' meeting officially began. All shareholders of Arctic Systems, Matt's 5 partners, the 2 investment representatives, and Ethan were gathered in the conference room. Matt sat at the head of the table and began reporting on the recent corporate situation. Everyone, since IceQ launched member subscriptions, Arctic Systems has turned a profit. However, because the value-added service system isn't fully developed, monthly revenue isn't high. On average, it's only about $75,000. Growth is limited. Management is actively looking for new drivers to increase revenue. However, due to the dot-com bubble burst abroad and the slowing growth of domestic internet users, new IceQ user growth is slowing down. The company faces significant revenue pressure in the future. I hope everyone understands. As Matt spoke, he glanced at Ethan. Seeing Ethan's expressionless face, he continued, but as long as we work together, we can weather this storm and keep the company alive. At the very least, our current operating status is much better than other internet companies. Gary Fisher from Summit Capital nodded and laughed. Matt is right. As long as you have confidence, we're at ease. Exactly, Matt. Just go ahead and do what needs to be done. Steve Foster encouraged. These two were obviously cozying up to Matt. Matt smiled slightly, then looked at Ethan. Ethan, what do you think? Ethan twirled the pen in his hand, looked up, and said calmly, I don't think external factors are the main reason for the company's slow revenue growth. I believe Arctic Systems needs to adopt a more aggressive marketing strategy to boost revenue. A monthly revenue of over 150,000 or even 300,000 is achievable. Matt flatly rejected him. Ethan, you might be a little too optimistic. Ethan looked him in the eye, tit for tat. I don't think I'm optimistic. I'd actually like to ask, Matt, why wasn't the marketing plan I submitted executed? Matt sat back, clasped his hands, and replied indifferently, I didn't think it was necessary for the company to invest so many resources into marketing. The ROI wouldn't be good. Ethan sneered, questioning, you haven't done it, so how do you know? Matt looked around the room and spread his hands. This was the result of our consensus. We all think so my decision to be conservative is correct. This is everyone's consensus. Matt was using the others to pressure Ethan, trying to leave him with no room to argue. Just a few sentences of dialogue caused the atmosphere in the conference room to drop to freezing point. Ethan scanned the others and asked, everyone's consensus? Why wasn't my opinion included? Am I not a member of the team? Am I not a shareholder? With that, Ethan rapped his knuckles on the table and said solemnly, Matt, don't forget, I'm part of this team too. Matt smiled. Ethan, how could I forget? I didn't say we'd never consider your marketing plan, just that it's not suitable right now. I still have that much decision-making power. Matt's words were soft but firm and impeccable, but they also meant he was laying his cards on the table with Ethan. He was clearly telling Ethan, Arctic Systems is still my turf. Xavier Yale chimed in with a laugh. Yeah, Ethan, the environment isn't great right now. We shouldn't be too aggressive with marketing strategies. Ethan narrowed his eyes, staring at him, and said calmly, so my role as director is useless? Matt smiled. Not at all, Ethan. We still believe in your abilities. But right now, the company needs you somewhere more important. Ethan asked coldly, where? Matt tapped the table. Arctic Systems plans to run some offline promotional activities in Chicago. A very important brand marketing campaign. Since you're based in Chicago, you'll be in full charge of the brand activities there. The company will give you full support. Matt's true objective was revealed. This was stripping Ethan of his operational management power at Arctic Systems and exiling him to an irrelevant position. A naked power grab. Hearing this, Tank was furious. He slammed the table and demanded, Matt, what does that mean? Sending Ethan to do brand activities in Chicago? What kind of joke is this? Xavier waved his hand, smiling. Brand activities are crucial. Don't get angry, Tank. There was a hint of mockery in Xavier's smile. I oughta. Tank was about to explode, but Ethan raised a hand to stop him. Ethan looked at Matt and said calmly, Matt, I refuse this transfer. With those words, the chill between Ethan and Matt seemed to fill the conference room. Their gazes locked, clashing head-on. Today is a shareholders meeting, so let's put it to a vote, Ethan. Matt raised his hand, smiling. Those in favor of this appointment, please raise your hand. Xavier was the first to raise his hand. Next were Gary Fisher from Summit Capital and Steve Foster from United Telecom. They raised their hands one after another. For people in the conference room had raised their hands, representing the majority of Arctic Systems' equity and holding decision-making power. As the de facto CEO, Matt had full authority over personnel. Matt looked at Danny, Zach, and Zane, his gaze carrying a hint of pressure. Sweat beaded on Danny's forehead. His right hand twitched, but in the end he didn't raise it. But it didn't matter anymore. Zach and Zane had absolutely no intention of raising their hands, forced to watch helplessly from the sidelines. Whether they raised their hands or not didn't change the fact that Ethan was being stripped of power. Ethan's gaze grew colder, though his expression remained composed. Matt, looks like you came prepared today. Ethan sneered. At this point, the two had completely torn off the mask of civility, bringing their conflict into the open. Matt lowered his hand, the corner of his mouth curling into a triumphant smile. Ethan, I hope you'll follow the company's arrangement. Tank slammed the table and stood up, eyes glaring furiously at Matt. He wanted to shout, but Ethan stopped him. Fine. Shareholders, minority obeys majority. I get it. Ethan smiled faintly. I submit to the company's decision. Matt straightened the documents in front of him, smiling. That's good. By the way, Ethan, regarding the VM agreement, if you forfeit the agreement, I'll provide corresponding equity compensation. I feel that now. There's no need for the company to continue with this bet. Ethan leaned back his chair, sneering. As for the agreement, I really don't want to give it up. Matt's face darkened. Although the company was under his control and revenue was entirely up to him, leaving Ethan with zero chance of winning. This agreement was still a thorn in his side. All right then, I won't force it. Matt said, keeping a calm surface, then stood up. Today's meeting ends here. Everyone is dismissed. Zach, Zane, Danny, you three come to my office. Saying that, Matt glanced at the three of them, then turned and left. Gary Fisher and Steve Foster also stood up, walked over to Ethan, and patted him on the shoulder. Gary laughed. Ethan, Arctic Systems still relies on Matt, you know? Just bear with it, huh? Steve also smiled. All right, Ethan, don't blame us. Arctic Systems needs stability. It's better for everyone to work together in the future. Ethan stood up, stared at the two, and said indifferently, Gentlemen, when the mountain collapses, make sure you're far away so the rocks don't hit you. Standing at the bottom of the mountain can be dangerous. Steve played dumb, deflecting. Of course, but San Jose isn't in an earthquake zone. It's very safe. All right, meeting's over. We should head back too. The two left the conference room side by side. As Xavier passed by Ethan, he finally couldn't hide the mocking look on his face. Ethan, do a good job with the brand in Chicago, Xavier followed them out. Zach stood up and walked over to Ethan, his face red with shame. Ethan, it done. I'm sorry. He was full of guilt toward Ethan. Everything was supposed to be fine. They would build the company and follow the agreement. An agreement was a businessman's promise. He just didn't expect that after the company took off, Matt wouldn't want to give up his equity and control, kicking Ethan out directly. He felt terrible, believing he bore some responsibility for this. Ethan gently patted his shoulder, comforting him. Hey, Zach, I'm fine. You don't need to apologize to me. I'll be staying in town for a few days. When I have time, let's grab dinner. Zach hadn't expected Ethan to be so open-minded and even comfort him. He was deeply moved. Okay. Ethan nodded, then turned and left the conference room, with Tank following closely behind. After leaving the room, Ethan and Tank didn't return to any office. They left the Arctic Systems building directly. As soon as they were outside, Tank's anger could no longer be contained. He cursed, son of a bitch. Ethan, that guy Matt is bullying us too much. It's obvious he wants to cheat. He doesn't want to honor the agreement. He wants to kick you out and make the bet fail. Damn it, that guy is so sinister. You really never know a person's heart. The elevator doors opened. Ethan didn't speak, walking straight in. Inside the elevator, seeing Ethan remain silent, Tank asked anxiously, Ethan, this situation is really bad for us. What do we do? A cold light flashed in Ethan's eyes. He said icily, what do we do? We serve a cold. Since he flipped the table, Matt shouldn't expect to eat this meal either. In the CEO's office, Matt Thorne leaned back in his executive chair, smoking a cigarette. Standing before him were Zach Bell, Zane King, and Danny. Xavier Yale sat on the sofa, legs crossed. The atmosphere in the office was oppressive. No one spoke. After a long silence, Matt tapped the ash from his cigarette and looked up at Zach. Zach, we've known each other for 5 years, right? Yeah, Matt. 5.5 years, Zach said, pulling up a chair and sitting down. Matt stared at him intently. Arctic Systems was built by our hands. Do you really want to hand it over to an outsider? Zach gripped the chair tightly, countering, outsider? Who's an outsider? Ethan. Matt took a heavy drag on his cigarette, his voice cold. Who else? Arctic Systems is our company. I hope you recognize that. Zach gritted his teeth. Then who stepped in when the company was in crisis? Who was it? Wasn't it Ethan? Wasn't it? His voice grew louder, venting his dissatisfaction. Arctic Systems had been on the brink of bankruptcy. If they hadn't found a new investor, they would have gone under. It was Ethan who brought in funds and solved the profitability problem. Zach remembered it clearly. He kept that gratitude in his heart at all times. Without Ethan's help, there would be no Arctic Systems today. Matt blew out a stream of smoke, his voice deep. I know, but you also have to understand one thing. We cannot lose Arctic Systems. This concerns the interests of all of us founders. Zach sneered, questioning. So, that's your excuse for breaking your promise? At that moment, the air seemed to freeze. Zane King, the peacemaker, couldn't bear to see friends fighting like this. He tugged at Zach's arm. Zach, calm down. Zach took 2 heavy breaths and stood up. Zane, I'm very calm. Saying that, he turned to Matt. Matt, Mr. Thorne, you know exactly who I am. All my life, I've just loved working on tech. I don't have that many schemes, and I don't care that much about money. But I understand the principles of being a human being. A person must know gratitude. That is my most fundamental principle. I do not accept what you're doing. Matt stubbed out his cigarette, his voice icy. Whether you accept it or not doesn't matter. I am the CEO. Zach, I'll give you one more chance. The last chance. From now on, stand by my side. Stand by Arctic Systems' side. Zach took off the ID badge hanging around his neck and slammed it onto the table. I only stand by my conscience. With that, Zach turned and left without looking back. Hey, Zach. Zach. Zane wanted to call him back, but Zach didn't stop. Bang. Zach slammed the door as he left. The office fell into silence again. Expressionless, Matt looked at Zane and Danny. Zane, it seems Zach isn't suitable to be the technical lead for Arctic Systems anymore. Let him go. You didn't raise your hand in the conference room either. What are your plans? Zane's expression changed. He felt Matt was forcing him to pick a side. Stand with Matt or stand with Ethan. There was no third option. Zane hesitated for a moment, then took off his badge. He sighed, placed it on the table, and said, Matt, I can understand you, but a man has to have a bottom line. With that, Zane shook his head and walked out of the office. Matt remained unmoved, turning his gaze to Danny. Danny looked hesitant, whispering, Matt, maybe we should try to talk to Zach and Zane again? Matt nodded. Danny, you go do that. Matt didn't push Danny, but from Danny's attitude, he knew Danny hadn't made a choice yet. All right, I'll go then. Danny nodded and turned to leave. Danny left the office, closing the door behind him. Xavier stood up, walked over to Matt, and whispered, Matt, now that the company is on the right track, it's time for some internal personnel changes. Matt's face instantly darkened. He grabbed the ashtray on the table and smashed it on the floor. Crash! The ashtray shattered, glass shards scattering everywhere. Go! Let them all go. The world keeps turning without them. Bunch of bastards. Matt cursed furiously. Xavier flincha, starlat. This was the biggest outburst he had ever seen from Matt, completely losing his usual calm and rationality. After a long while, Matt panted a few times, calming down, and rationality returned to his eyes. Xavier, notify HR to suspend Zach and Zane's work and start recruiting new technical executives externally, Matt ordered, turning his head. Since Zach wasn't of one mind, he had to be discarded. Xavier nudda. Yes, I'll arrange it right away. Xavier turned to leave, but was called back. Xavier, just do your job quietly, understand? Matt stared at him, his gaze seeming to pierce through him. A chill ran down Xavier's spine. He nodded repeatedly, agreeing. Then, Xavier turned and left the office. Outside, Xavier took out his phone, walked out of the company, hesitated for a moment, wanted to make a call, but stopped. His face was grim as he muttered to himself. Did he find out? Should be fine. He had been scared into a cold sweat by Matt's words, thinking his embezzlement from the company had been discovered. But thinking about it, maybe it was just a reminder for Matt. He shouldn't have found out. Now that the company's senior management was falling apart, and he was the only one standing firmly by Matt, he should be safe. Even if it was discovered, Matt probably wouldn't do anything to him. Thinking this, Xavier felt a bit more at ease. That night, in a luxury suite at the Grand Monarch Hotel in San Jose, there were about a dozen people in the living room. Tank took out cigarettes and distributed them. Ross want one? Tank asked Ross Lawton with a grin. Ross was focused on studying the agreement documents. He waved his hand. No thanks, you guys go ahead. Saying that, Ross looked at his colleagues and instructed, check the IceQ user agreement too. And the colleagues from financial audit, come up with an audit plan. Yes, Mr. Lawton. The others responded, busying themselves. A while later, Ross stood up and walked over to Ethan, smiling. Ethan, I just re-examined the VM agreement. There are indeed loopholes we can use. There is no perfect law in the world, and naturally, no perfect agreement. Ethan tapped his cigarette ash, asking with a smile, Ha, Ross, you're good. If you dare say that, you must have a plan, right? Ross pushed up his glasses, the corner of his mouth curling into a cunning smile. Ethan, you know me. Oh, what's your plan? Ethan asked. Ross walked over and whispered a few sentences in Ethan's ear. Ethan listened and laughed. Haha, you really are something. It's exactly what I was thinking. But legally, you're the pro. Ross straightened up, grinning. You flatter me, Ethan. It's your idea that's brilliant. Ethan blew a smoke ring, smiling. I'll handle the other shareholders. The rest is up to you. Done, Ross responded. Ethan stood up and turned to the Drake brothers standing on the balcony. Duke, Dan, come here. I have something for you to do. The Drake brothers immediately walked over quickly. Ethan, what are your orders? Duke asked respectfully. Ethan smiled. Tomorrow, invite a few friends for dinner. Remember, even if they don't want to come, they have to come. Hearing the last sentence, Duke understood. Yes, Ethan, I got it. The next evening, in the underground parking garage of the Central Business District, Gary Fisher tucked his briefcase under his arm, whistling as he walked to his car. Just as he was about to open the door, two headlights suddenly shone from the opposite side. He instinctively raised his hand to block the blinding light. vaguely seeing a figure silhouetted in the beam. "Mr. Fisher, our boss would like to invite you for a casual dinner." A man's deep voice rang out, the tone unquestionable and refusing refusal. Gary was stunned. He hadn't expected someone to be looking for him. He sized up the man before him, tall, muscular, unsmiling, but didn't recognize him. "Who is your boss?" Gary asked with a frown. Duke stepped forward, saying calmly, "Our boss, Mr. Ford." Gary realized, waving his hand dismissively. "Oh, it's Ethan's people. If he wants to invite me to dinner, why didn't he come himself?" "Heh, sorry, I'm not free today. Tell him we'll do it another day." With that, Gary got into his car and tried to start the engine, but the car wouldn't start. Click, click, click. He tried repeatedly, but it wouldn't turn over. The car seemed broken. Duke stood in front of the car, saying calmly, "Looks like Mr. Fisher's car is broken. Why don't I give you a ride?" Gary's heart skipped a beat, sensing something wrong. The car seemed to have been tampered with. Anger rose in his chest. He got out and demanded, "What is the meaning of this? What if I don't go?" Duke clapped his hands. The sound echoed in the garage. Immediately, heavy footsteps approached from all directions. Figures in black uniforms appeared in the garage, standing at the exits and entrances, watching the two from a distance. Seeing this, Gary trembled, a chill running down his spine. Ethan was for real. Given the situation, it looked like he had to go whether he wanted to or not. Gary remembered his mockery of Ethan yesterday and felt cold. Was Ethan going to take revenge on him? "Mr. Fisher, please." Duke extended a hand, gesturing for him to get into the sedan opposite. "Fine, fine." Sweat beaded on Gary's forehead. He was nervous, but could only agree, walking over to sit in Duke's car. Meanwhile, downstairs at United Telecom, Steve Foster hadn't driven today and planned to take a taxi home. He came to the roadside and saw a taxi. Just as he was about to walk over, 3 black sedans drove up and stopped right in front of him. From the passenger seat, a young man with a flat-top haircut and a suit stepped out. "Mr. Foster, Mr. Ford would like to invite you for a casual dinner." "Please, get in," Dan Drake said calmly to Steve. Steve looked at the man warily. "Ethan is looking for me? Inviting me to dinner?" "Yes. Mr. Fisher is already on his way. Dan noted, expressionless." Hearing that Gary Fisher had already gone, Steve knew, without thinking, it was about Arctic systems. But he had already taken benefits from Matt and promised not to wade into this muddy water. He felt there was no need to get entangled with Ethan anymore. "Sorry, please tell Ethan I have urgent matters today. Let's reschedule." Steve declined. Saying that, he started walking toward the taxi. At that moment, 6 men in black uniforms stepped out of the 2 cars behind Dan, blocking Steve's path. Steve's face changed dramatically. Dan said coldly, "Mr. Foster, please get in the car." Steve nervously gripped his briefcase, seeing that these men had no intention of moving. Looks like he couldn't skip this trip. He gritted his teeth, thought for a moment, and said, "Fine, I'll go see Ethan." Sunset, the banquet hall of the Grand Monarch Hotel. Gary Fisher arrived at the banquet hall first, only to see it sparsely populated. There wasn't a single diner. Given the hotel's class and reputation, this place was usually packed at night. Today, contrary to the norm, there were only a dozen or so people wearing black uniforms. The uniforms had Westford security patches on them. "Mr. Fisher, please." Duke gestured for him to walk further in, toward a private room at the end of the hall. Gary didn't speak. With a dark face, he walked forward. Suddenly, he heard movement behind him. He looked back and saw Steve Foster arriving. "Steve," Gary called out. Steve hurried over, whispering, "Gary, came by yourself." Gary gave a bitter laugh, glancing secretly at Duke. "They brought me here." The implication was obvious. Steve understood, whispering, "Same here." "Gentlemen, please. Ethan is waiting for you in the private room," Duke said coldly. Okay." Steve nodded repeatedly. Both men looked grim, but they consciously walked toward the room. 2 men guarded the door, opening it for them. As soon as the door opened, a spicy scent wafted out. It was the smell of a spicy seafood boil. Steve walked in first and saw Ethan sitting at the head of the table, eating casually. Tank stood to the side smoking, staring coldly at the two. "Hey, Ethan. Wayne," Steve greeted with a dry laugh. Ethan put down his fork, wiped his mouth, looked at the two, and nodded. "You're here. Seat." Ethan wasn't polite to them at all, showing no warmth on his face. Steve and Gary looked at each other, neither knowing what Ethan intended. But they obediently found seats opposite Ethan. Facing him, they subconsciously sat up straight, looking nervous. The atmosphere in the room was weird and oppressive. Steve broke the silence first, laughing dryly. Ethan, eating a boil tonight? The spices smell great. Ethan took a cigarette, lit it himself, narrowed his eyes at him, and smiled. The taste is good, but I don't have much of an appetite. Steve, Gary, your appetite should be pretty good, right? Seeing me frozen out of Arctic systems, does the food taste even better? Steve's face changed instantly, his palms sweating. Ethan had indeed come for yesterday's events. He forced a laugh. No, Ethan, you're joking. Ethan blew a smoke ring, staring at him coldly. Am I joking with you? Steve felt his scalp tingle under Ethan's icy gaze. Even with all his experience in the business world, he had never felt this kind of pressure. This meal was not going to go down easy. Ethan was definitely looking for payback for yesterday. What surprised him was that Ethan had more power, more energy than he anticipated. The men outside, those West Ford security guys, looked like trouble. His heart hung in his throat, palms sweating. He wiped them secretly on his trousers. Ethan, about yesterday. Really sorry about that. We had no choice. Control of Arctic systems is still in Matt's hands, Steve said, shirking responsibility. Ethan snorted coldly. You took benefits from Matt, didn't you? Steve was startled. He didn't expect Ethan to guess that. His face darkened, and he gritted his teeth secretly. Ethan, you can't just slander people out of thin air. We came here today out of respect. What more do you want? Saying that, Steve secretly signaled Gary to be tougher. Gary got the hint, mustered his courage, and questioned Ethan back. Ethan, isn't this inappropriate? You invite us to dinner just to embarrass us about yesterday. Let me tell you, Gary Fisher, have seen it all. Your little display here doesn't scare me. Gary was betting that Ethan wouldn't dare actually do anything to him. He wasn't just a businessman. He was Summit Capital's man. And Summit Capital had people above them. Ethan smoked a cigarette and said abruptly, Gary, pretty tough. Did you think I didn't know about you stabbing me in the back? Matt sought you out to freeze me out because he wants to plant your people in Arctic systems, right? Let me guess again. Matt probably also promised to give you some private shares, didn't he? Gary's face changed drastically. How did Ethan guess everything right? That's slander, Gary shouted, flying into a rage out of humiliation. Ethan grabbed the heavy ceramic bowl from the table and smashed it right onto Gary's forehead. Crash, the bowl shattered. Gary saw red instantly, blood flowing down his forehead. Blood. Gary cried out in pain, covering his forehead. Blood trickled through his fingers, scaring him pale with terror. Next to him, Steve jumped, startled by Ethan's sudden violence. Tonight's Ethan wasn't the polite, modest man from before. He was a wolf, a bloodthirsty wolf. Ethan slammed the table and stood up, looking ruthless. Gary, I sent you so many gifts before, and you still screw me with Matt? Did I feed all that to a dog? You're a damn dog. You screw with me, I screw with you. Gary clutched his head, trembling, daring not to make a sound. This completely shattered his courage. This young man in front of him was terrifying. Ethan took another cigarette, lit it, and smoked. Gary, guess what Summit Capital will do if they find out you used your position for personal gain and took kickbacks from Matt? Gary shuddered violently. This was a threat, a naked threat. If the firm found out about these things, he would definitely be fired. He might even go to jail. He didn't know how Ethan knew or what evidence Ethan held. But he didn't dare gamble. Not one bit. If Ethan really had something, his life would be ruined. No, Ethan. Mr. Ford, Gary pleaded hurriedly. Steve naturally understood Ethan's meaning too. He quickly stood up. Ethan, whatever it is, let's talk. We can talk. Ethan blew a smoke ring and sneered. Talk? Did I invite you here to talk? Steve froze. He hadn't expected Ethan to be so aggressive. He must have leverage. Yes, yesterday was our fault. Really sorry. So sorry. Please, Ethan, have mercy. Have mercy. Steve bowed and scraped. Gary, ignoring the blood on his forehead, also rushed to say, Yes, Ethan, have mercy. He gritted his teeth and continued. Ethan, what do you want us to do? Ethan held up 2 fingers, speaking calmly. First, cooperate to pass the VM agreement. Second, I will buy back your shares in Arctic systems at double the price. Gary paused, then looked troubled. Ethan, with just our shares, even adding yours, it seems hard to pass the agreement. Plus, Matt has operational control. Whether the agreement can be fulfilled is out of our hands. Steve nodded repeatedly. Yeah, as long as Matt doesn't execute revenue projects, there's no way. Matt controlled Arctic systems. Whether the company generated revenue was entirely up to him. They couldn't interfere, let alone ensure the agreement passed. Ethan sneered. That's not for you to worry about. $10 million in revenue. If I say it can be done, It will be done. Steve and Gary looked at each other, not knowing what Ethan was plotting, but seeing he seemed confident. Gary whispered, Okay, we'll definitely cooperate. But there's one more thing. About the shares. We still have to discuss it with the company board. Ethan narrowed his eyes at him. Gary, don't play dumb with me. Don't I know Summit Capital style? Double the price buyback. The terms are good enough. Don't be greedy. If you don't agree to the buyback, when I control the company, all you'll end up with is a shell. Gary's expression changed. He didn't expect Ethan to see through his little scheme so easily. If Ethan won the VM agreement, Arctic Systems would fall under his control. The $2 million initially invested by Summit and United would be sunk costs. Gary sighed, resigned. All right, we'll listen to you, Ethan. The corner of Ethan's mouth curled into a smile. He stood up and handed 2 cigarettes to them. A tea, thanks. Gary froze, quickly taking the cigarette, but he felt Ethan was even more terrifying now. His face changed faster than flipping a page in a book. Ethan grabbed a few tissues and wiped the blood from Gary's forehead, smiling. Gary, I'm actually a very kind person. Gary. Steve. Was this human language? Ethan continued. If people don't offend me, I don't offend them. If you had just stayed neutral and done your job as investors, that would have been enough. But you had to wade into this muddy water and stab me in the back. So you can't blame me. Gary felt a chill in his heart and quickly shook his head. No, Ethan. Absolutely won't happen again. Ethan threw away the tissues, patted his shoulder, and laughed. Good. I still trust you, Gary. Gary grimaced, cold sweat on his forehead. This young man was too scary. Ethan took a decanter and poured them each a glass of expensive liquor, then raised his own glass with a smile. Come, let's drink to our cooperation and friendship. Steve and Gary hurriedly picked up their glasses and stood up, saying in unison, to Ethan. At 9 o'clock that night, a convoy of cars sped along the road. Inside one of the Mercedes, Tank turned to look at Ethan, who was resting with his eyes closed. Ethan, we're almost at Xavier's apartment complex. Ethan opened his eyes, looking out the window at the deep night, dotted with brilliant neon lights, silent and distant. All right, call Xavier. Tell him to come see me, Ethan said coldly. Tank thought for a moment and whispered, Ethan, for a parasite like him, why not just take him out first? Ethan smiled. Parasites are sometimes useful too. Night. Inside, Xavier yells home. Honey, give me a bottle of the good stuff? Xavier shouted from the dining table, cracking peanuts. His wife, Trish, put down her dish towel and rolled her eyes at him. Drinking this late? Really? Don't worry about it. I'm in a good mood. What's a few glasses? Xavier said leisurely. Did you win a lottery or something? Trish laughed, opening the liquor cabinet to grab a bottle of expensive whiskey. Usually, they couldn't bear to drink this stuff. They only opened it for important guests. Xavier took the bottle, chuckled, and said something like that. Now that the company situation was clear and Matt controlled everything, there would definitely be benefits coming his way. Promotions, raises, shares, he'd get his cut. With IceQ on the right track, there would be tons of chances to make money in the future. Xavier poured himself a glass, hummed a happy tune, tossed a piece of tender roast beef into his mouth, and took a sip. Delicious. Just as he was about to enjoy his late-night snack, his phone rang. When he saw the number, he frowned. It was Wayne Tank Turner. He hesitated, but eventually chose to answer. Good evening, Wayne. Xavier laughed insincerely. Xavier, you're at home, right? My boss wants to see you. Tank laughed on the other end. Now, it's so late. I have things to do later. I am Busu. Another day. Xavier refused perfunctorily. He didn't have a good relationship with Ethan anyway. There was no need to meet. Tank sneered. Xavier, think clearly. Some things are better discussed face to face. Otherwise, Matt might be very interested in that supply chain business. Xavier's heart tightened. How did they know? How did Ethan and his crew know about the kickbacks? Xavier's face changed drastically, and he fell silent. After a while, Xavier asked in a low voice, I don't know what you're talking about. It's late. I can't go out. Let's talk tomorrow. He wanted to deny it to the death. Tank laughed. Xavier, you don't need to go anywhere. We're right downstairs. What? Xavier was shocked. He hadn't expected Ethan to be at his building. What were they trying to do? Xavier thought for a moment and said coldly, Ethan really puts in the effort, coming personally. Fine, I'll be down in a minute. Hanging up the phone, Xavier's expression shifted rapidly. Honey, what's wrong? Who called? Trish asked, confused. Xavier put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth, and said gravely, A colleague is here. I'm going to meet him. Saying that, he got up and grabbed his coat. Going out this late? Trish asked, puzzled. She rarely saw Xavier look so serious. Yeah, urgent business. I'll be back soon. Xavier opened the door and walked out. A short while later, when Xavier arrived downstairs, he saw 8 black sedans parked by the road, headlights on. 2 men stood in front of the lead car's headlights, smoking. Ethan Wayne. Xavier recognized them and walked forward to greet them, smiling without warmth. Hearing the voice, Ethan turned around, sized him up, and smiled. Xavier, nice place you live in. Must have cost a lot. This complex was one of the better mid to high-end ones in San Jose. Based on Xavier's salary, he couldn't afford a house here. This meant Xavier had income other than his salary. Ethan's single sentence made his intention clear. Ethan, you're joking. My wife's family supported us. How could I afford this? Ethan blew a smoke ring, stared at him, and smiled. Xavier, no need to play dumb with me. Did you think what you did was seamless? Or did you think you were smart enough to fool everyone? Xavier's heart trembled, but he maintained his composure on the surface, asking, Ethan, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan walked over, stood in front of Xavier, and said coldly, Stop playing the fool. You took benefits from Jean-Fay Corp and did quite a few things in Arctic Systems' name, didn't you? Hearing this, Xavier's face went instantly white. How do you know? How do you know? Xavier Yale blurted it out in shock. He never expected Ethan to have investigated these things. Thinking about the leverage falling into Ethan's hands, his face grew even uglier. Ethan sneered. Just checking your transaction records makes it crystal clear. If you don't want people to know, don't do it. Since entering Arctic Systems, Ethan had been keeping an eye on every executive's business dealings. He was well aware of Xavier's little maneuvers. If Matt hadn't flipped the table, and if Xavier hadn't sided with Matt, these matters could have been ignored. Ethan wasn't in a rush to move against Xavier. But since the mask had been torn off, there was no need for reservations. Ethan exhaled smoke and said calmly, Xavier, as a shareholder of Arctic Systems, logically, I should send you to prison. Xavier turned pale with fright, pleading hurriedly, No, Ethan, don't. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. If he went in, his life would be over. He was genuinely terrified. Ethan narrowed his eyes, patted his shoulder, and smiled. If you don't want to go in, you need to do something to prove that you still have value to me. Xavier froze, roughly guessing what Ethan wanted him to do. Ethan wanted to go after Matt. He hesitated a tiny bit, but for his own survival, he had no choice. Ethan, please give your orders. 3 days later, Arctic Systems. In the office, Matt Thorne was working at his desk, reviewing the IceQ member growth report and writing notes. A knock on the door sounded, and his assistant Lucas walked in. Matt, here are the weekly reports from the departments. Do you want to see them now? Lucas handed over the documents. Yes, all recently launched business needs approval before implementation. Matt looked up and took the files. He flipped through them, checking the work reports, including IceQ's various operations. Scanning briefly, he stopped at the PR department's report. Why is this Penguin IceQ co-branded product project moving forward? Matt asked suddenly. Lucas replied respectfully, Matt, regarding the work you mentioned last time to enhance the Penguin brand effect, Xavier plans to continue executing this project. Adopting co-branding can better enhance the brand. This plan was submitted to you 2 days ago. Matt realized, remembering Xavier had indeed mentioned this to him a couple of days ago. This kind of project wasn't too important. After all, no enterprise would really spend much money on Penguin. It was just a way to leverage brand effects. All right, I got it. Let Xavier handle it. Matt nodded, then wrote a simple approval on the report. Now he controlled all affairs of Arctic Systems, literally micromanaging. Currently, Arctic Systems had revenue, but under his specific manipulation, the revenue level wasn't high. Reaching 10 million annually was basically impossible. He was confident he would win this bet. Matt, Zach and Zane have both taken leave. Now the tech and operations departments lack supervisors. Some work is hard to push forward, Lucas whispered. Matt frowned and said calmly, I know. Tell HR to recruit new supervisors as soon as possible. Arctic Systems won't die without them. Yes, Matt. I'll urge HR right away. Lucas bowed and responded. Matt acknowledged, but seeing Lucas hadn't left, asked casually, Is there anything else? Lucas hesitated for a moment, then said, Matt, I heard some rumors that United Telecom and Summit Capital want to hold a shareholders meeting next week. I heard the supervisors chatting about it. Matt, is there really going to be a meeting next week? I should prepare. Hold a shareholders meeting? Why haven't I heard of it? Matt stared at him, doubt in his eyes. He was the actual controller of Arctic Systems. If shareholders wanted a meeting, he would be the first to know. He wondered how these rumors started. I see. Probably just idle chatter from the staff, Lucas smiled. Matt thought carefully for a moment, tapped the table, and said, "Prepare the car. I need to go to Summit Capital. I want to see Gary." Matt was always cautious. Since there was a rumor, he had to take it seriously. He wanted to see Gary Fisher personally to clarify. "Yes, Matt. I'll prepare the car." Lucas bowed and left. About half an hour later, Matt came out of the office and ran into Xavier Yale in the office area. "Hey, Xavier, wait a second." Matt called out to him. Xavier stopped, his face looking a bit unnatural. He laughed wryly. "Hey, Matt. What's up?" Matt patted his shoulder and laughed heartily. "Haha, what could be up? We're all on the same team. No need for orders. That product co-branding thing, keep an eye on it. But no need to make it too big. Step by step." Xavier nodded. "Yes, Matt. I understand." Matt examined his face and asked, "Xavier, you look a bit off these past 2 days. Not sleeping well. Maybe just a bit tired recently." I'm fine, Xavier laughed P17. Matt smiled slightly, patted his shoulder, and encouraged, "I know you're working hard. Just get through this half year, and everything will get better. By the way, Xavier, there's one more thing I want your opinion on." "Please say it, Matt," Xavier said in a low voice. Matt narrowed his eyes and smiled. "I want you to take over Ethan's position." "Me? Take over Ethan's position? Operations director?" Xavier asked in shock. Matt nodded, smiling. "Yes, Xavier. You're the brother I trust most. Such an important position naturally goes to you." A strange look flashed in Xavier's eyes. He hesitated, then forced a smile. Okay, whatever you say, Matt." Matt noticed something was off and asked suspiciously, "Xavier, what's wrong? You seem distracted. If you're too tired, take a couple of days off to rest." Xavier shook his head repeatedly. No need." Matt pondered for a moment. Then, "Adjust yourself. By the way, Gary at Summit Capital wants to hold a shareholders meeting." Xavier's face went pale. "I don't know. I see. I have to go to Summit anyway. I'm heading out." Matt smiled, then patted his shoulder and left. Xavier watched Matt's retreating back and exhaled heavily. "Matt, oh Matt, don't blame me." That night, Matt returned home, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Honey, I'm home," Matt called out. Judy Thorne walked out of the kitchen wearing an apron. Seeing the flowers in Matt's hand, she smiled. "You're back. Why the flowers?" Matt laughed, handing them to her with both hands. "Uh-huh. I thought I hadn't given you flowers in a while. How are they?" "Beautiful." Judy took the bouquet, looked at it, and beamed. "Beautiful, beautiful. Look at how happy you are. Did you win the lottery?" Matt took off his suit jacket, relaxed. "No lottery. Just that the company matters are finally settled. I feel much more at ease. I went to see Gary at Summit today. He said he wants to continue increasing investment in Arctic Systems and increase his shareholding." Hearing this, Judy couldn't help but be surprised. "Really? That's great. Based on the company's current valuation, that's worth a lot of money." Matt nodded, smiling. "Yes, it is worth a lot. Our days of financial freedom aren't far off." Judy happily hugged Matt, praising him. "My husband is amazing. Tonight, I'll add an extra dish." Saying that, she turned to go back to the kitchen, but stopped and asked back, "What about Ethan and Zach?" Matt waved his hand, indifferent. "No need to worry about them now. They can't make any waves. The entire company is under my control. No one can touch it. Ethan is just a minor shareholder now. If he wants to keep the shares, he can. If not, I can buy them back. When the shareholders' meeting convenes tomorrow, there won't be any place for him in Arctic Systems. I plan to let Xavier take over his position." Hearing this, Judy asked doubtfully, "Will Ethan just accept that?" Matt sneered disdainfully. "What can he do if he doesn't? All right, I've got the company matters under control. Don't worry." Judy nodded and stopped asking, returning to the kitchen to cook. Matt sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, his mind racing. Seeing Gary today, he realized Gary intended to increase his stake, hence the meeting. This was a good thing for him, so he agreed. If others didn't want to dilute their shares, he could dilute his own 5% stake and cash out nearly $200,000. That was already a significant sum for him. Thinking of this, Matt's mouth curled into a confident smile. With total control of Arctic Systems and some capital in hand, he would have no more worries. Once the VM agreement deadline passed, he could develop Arctic Systems with full force. "Ethan, fight me, you're still too green." Early the next morning, Friday, Arctic Systems convened a shareholders meeting. Matt arrived at the conference room early, waiting for the others. Approaching the start time, Steve Foster from United Telecom and Gary Fisher from Summit Capital arrived together. Then Xavier, Zach, and the others. At the last moment, Ethan, Tank, and Ross Lawton appeared in the room. "Ethan." Zach's eyes were red, his face haggard. He stood up to greet Ethan. Ethan looked at him, smiled slightly, and nodded. Zach, keep your chin up. Zach forced a smile and nodded. Seeing them whispering, Matt frowned. Did Zach really defect to Ethan? The thought suddenly popped into his mind. Even the best friends were unreliable. Anger rose in Matt's heart. But reason told him that even if the two stood together, it had no effect on him. As long as he firmly controlled the company, they couldn't do anything. Ahem, since everyone is here, let's start today's meeting. Matt coughed dryly and called out to everyone. Ethan shrugged and sat at the other end of the conference table, directly opposite Matt. Matt snorted inwardly and said, calling everyone for this meeting today is mainly to discuss Gary's increase in company shareholding. I want to hear everyone's opinion. His voice fell, and silence filled the room. No one spoke. Even Gary Fisher, who had proposed the meeting, remained silent, sitting straight in his chair with a bandage on his forehead, his face grim. A trace of doubt and unease rose in Matt's heart. He continued, if you have opinions, raise them. Speak freely. Gary, why don't you start? Gary gave a dry laugh. Well, maybe we should hear other opinions first. With that, Gary turned his gaze to Ethan. The others also turned to look at Ethan. Ethan leaned back in his chair, relaxed, tapped the table, and smiled. We can discuss increasing shares later. We have a more important matter regarding the equity transfer after the fulfillment of the VM agreement. Hearing this, Matt couldn't help but sneer. Ethan, what nonsense are you talking about? The VM agreement hasn't been met yet. What equity transfer? Did you win a bet? Ridiculous. Ethan shrugged nonchalantly. I won. Arctic Systems hit $10 million in revenue. Done. Matt sneered. Ethan, are you drunk? If you're drunk, you can skip the meeting. Ethan signaled Ross with a look. Ross pushed up his glasses and pulled a contract from his satchel. This is a brand co-branding marketing contract reached between West Ford and Arctic Systems. West Ford will pay Arctic Systems a brand licensing fee of $1.5 million, effective immediately as of yesterday, which means as of 4 p.m. yesterday, Arctic Systems has already achieved multi-million-dollar revenue, fulfilling the VM agreement. According to the clause in the agreement stating equity transfer is effective immediately upon fulfillment, we now have the right to demand all signatories of the VM agreement to immediately initiate the equity transfer process. This is the contract, and this is the notice. Ross placed the contract in the middle of the conference table, then distributed the notices to the others. Hearing this, Matt was completely stunned. What? What did you say? $1.5 million in licensing fees. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I've never even seen it, never signed it. Matt slammed the table and stood up, eyes red, staring dead at Ethan. Ethan, this is impossible. What the hell are you playing at? Ethan Ford remained calm in the face of Matt Thorne's fiery glare. Pointing at the document on the table, Ethan smiled faintly. Mr. Thorne, why don't you take a look for yourself? Matt snatched the contract from the table and flipped through it rapidly. When he saw the signature and the official seal on the final page, he froze. The signature read, Xavier Yale. Xavier had signed the contract yesterday and stamped it with the Arctic Systems seal. Matt's mind exploded with a deafening boom. He was completely dumbfounded. In that instant, he finally understood. This was a trap, a setup. He never imagined that Xavier would defect, betrayed by his most trusted friend, his brother. A surge of rage shot through him. Matt slammed the contract down and whipped his head around to glare at Xavier. Xavier, what the hell is this? Xavier lowered his head, silent, not daring to respond. You teamed up with Ethan to stab me in the back. Matt demanded, his voice trembling with malice. Xavier's face was pale, and he still couldn't bring himself to speak. Matt rushed out of his seat and grabbed Xavier by the collar, looking like a madman. Why? Why? Why would you betray me? Matt screamed hysterically. Everyone in the conference room watched him, but no one spoke. It was as if Matt's reaction was exactly what they had expected. Matt shoved Xavier away and looked around the room. Seeing the expressions on everyone's faces, the realization fully hit him. Today's meeting was a setup orchestrated by Ethan. Mr. Fisher, Mr. Foster. Matt turned to look at Gary Fisher and Steve Foster. Gary Fisher smiled awkwardly. Matt, we feel that Arctic Systems would be better suited under the leadership of someone more capable. Matt was shocked. He subconsciously took a step back, staring at him. Sure enough, Gary Fisher had turned as well. Yesterday, Xavier had pushed for the brand collaboration project. Matt had thought it was just a small business move, nothing major. He hadn't realized this was the beginning of Ethan's trap. Xavier had taken full responsibility for the project, signing a contract between Arctic Systems and West Ford Group, making the revenue a fait accompli, thus triggering the VM agreement. And the news Gary Fisher had leaked yesterday. was just a ploy to distract him. Matt suddenly thought of someone. He turned to look at the assistant in the corner of the conference room. Lucas. Lucas, it was you. You gave the official seal to Xavier. Matt's eyes were bloodshot, his voice low and dangerous. Lucas looked terrified and stammered. And Mr. Thorne, why you ordered Mr. Yale to move forward with this business. So I just... Matt nearly had a stroke from anger. In the end, he only had himself to blame for trusting Xavier too much. Ethan, you set me up. I don't accept this. I will never acknowledge this contract. Matt looked at Ethan and gritted his teeth. Ethan smiled slightly. It's not up to you to acknowledge it anymore. Ross, continue. Ross Lawton smiled. Yes, Mr. Ford. According to the Valuation Adjustment Mechanism Agreement, now that the performance targets have been met, all parties must immediately cooperate with the equity transfer. If you do not cooperate, we will take legal measures to protect our rights. According to the liability for breach of contract, the defaulting party must compensate the agreement party 10 times the total losses. This includes, but is not limited to, compensation for economic losses and the value of investment equity. With that, Ross took out the equity transfer agreements and handed one to Zach Bell first. Gentlemen, you've read the notice. Now, it's time to honor the spirit of the contract, Ross said with a smile. Zach Bell picked up the pen without hesitation and signed his name. I support Mr. Ford, Zach said solemnly after signing. He was the first to finish. Next were Zane King, Danny, and the other co-founders, followed by the investors, Steve Foster and Gary Fisher. Finally, the agreement was placed in front of Matt. I won't sign it. Matt sat back in his chair, his face ashen. Ethan sneered. Accept your loss, Mr. Thorne. You need to think clearly about the consequences of breaching the contract. Matt snapped. This is your conspiracy. I demand an internal investigation into this cooperation contract. I want to terminate the contract with West 4 Group. Ethan tapped the table and said calmly, it seems you still haven't grasped the reality of the situation. Saying that, Ethan raised his hand. I propose a motion to remove Matt Thorne from his position as CEO of Arctic Systems. All in favor, raise your hand. Matt's heart shook violently, and he slumped into his chair. One by one, hands went up in the conference room. Zach Bell, Zane King, Danny, Xavier Yale. Sorry, Matt. Steve Foster chuckled dryly and raised his hand as well. Gary Fisher slowly raised his hand last. With that, shareholders holding over 60% of Arctic Systems equity had voted to remove Matt Thorne as CEO. Seeing this, Matt's eyes filled with despair. I propose that Mr. Ford take over as the new CEO. Zach Bell raised his hand. Everyone else raised their hands in unison. With the exception of Matt, it was a unanimous vote. Congratulations, Mr. Ford. Steve Foster congratulated Ethan with a fake smile. Ethan nodded in acknowledgement, then stood up and said to Matt, Mr. Thorne, you have been relieved of your duties. I announce that the cooperation between Arctic Systems and West 4 Group will continue. Matt's face was deathly gray as he collapsed into his chair. It took a long time for him to come back to his senses. He stared dead at Ethan. Ethan, you won. Ethan walked over, pushed the equity transfer agreement in front of him, and said calmly, we didn't have to get to this point. Sign it. Matt looked at the pen on the agreement, his hand trembling. He reached out and grasped it, but he couldn't bring himself to write a single word. His hand shook violently, as if he were trying his best to suppress the unwillingness and rage erupting from his heart. Ethan looked down at him and said coldly, Mr. Thorne, you don't want to pay a massive sum in damages, do you? Matt's face went white instantly. He knew very well that once he breached the VM agreement, he would face astronomical compensation claims. The situation was irreversible. Holding on to his last shred of reason, he put the pen to paper and signed his name. The moment he finished writing his name, it was as if all his strength had been drained. He went limp in the chair. Ethan took back the agreement, leaned in, and whispered in Matt's ear, Mr. Thorne, you'd best hand over the rest of what you owe. Don't wait until I audit Arctic Systems' financials to decide. You only have one chance, and it's today. Xavier told me everything about you embezzling company funds. Matt's eyes widened instantly, his expression one of shock. He hadn't expected Xavier to sell him out so thoroughly, leaving absolutely no room for mercy. He had indeed moved company funds to subsidize his family expenses in the past, but he had balanced the books quickly. Only Xavier knew about it. Ethan, do you have to be this ruthless? Matt gritted his teeth. Ethan replied indifferently, ruthless? When you kicked me out of Arctic Systems, when you wanted to replace me, did you ever think about how ruthless you were being? Mr. Thorne, in this game, the winner takes all. Ross took out a separate transfer contract and placed it in front of Matt, smiling. Mr. Thorne, sign it. Otherwise, you're looking at a minimum sentence of 3 years. The conference room was deathly silent. One could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ethan and Matt, while Ethan's gaze was fixed on the pen in Matt's hand. The air was so thick it felt suffocating. Zach Bell's hand trembled, then clenched. There was a look of struggle on his face. He had a deep friendship with Matt, and he didn't want to see things end like this. But reality forced him to make a choice, and Matt was no longer the close friend worthy of his trust. This outcome was the fruit of Matt's own greed. If Matt had been willing to accept Ethan as part of the team, or even as the leader of Arctic Systems, and shared the fruits of success, united in developing the company, things wouldn't have reached this point. But Matt wasn't willing to let go of his hard-won power, nor the profits that were within his grasp. As the saying goes, men die for wealth, and birds die for food. Mr. Thorne, if you please, Ross gestured to Matt. Matt's face was pale. After a moment of silence, with a trembling hand, he signed his name. The moment he finished, he slammed the pen onto the table. Ethan, are you satisfied? He looked up, staring at Ethan with bloodshot eyes. He understood that from this moment on, he had lost Arctic Systems. He had lost everything since starting the business. All his past efforts had gone down the drain. It felt like a sharp blade was twisting in his heart. This pushed his hatred for Ethan to its peak. I'm satisfied. Ethan shrugged, smiling faintly. Gary Fisher was the first to stand and applaud. Congratulations, Mr. Ford. Oh no, President Ford. Wayne Tank. Turner finally cracked a smile and applauded enthusiastically. The others stood up one by one, applauding and looking at Ethan, the victor before them. Matt had become an irrelevant outsider to Arctic Systems. Gary Fisher and Steve Foster no longer needed to care about Matt's feelings. They could ignore his existence entirely and start sucking up to Ethan. Ethan smiled slightly, raising a hand to quiet them. Thank you all for your support. I believe that with our concerted efforts, Arctic Systems will develop better and better. Steve Foster nodded and bowed slightly, smiling. With President Ford leading the way, Arctic Systems is sure to achieve greater glory. Ethan smiled. Thank you for your trust, Mr. Foster. Ethan then turned to Ross and instructed, Ross, arrange the manpower to take over Arctic Systems' finance and HR departments. Ross bowed slightly. Yes, Mr. Ford. I'll get right on it. Bang. Suddenly, the sound of a hand slamming on a table rang out. Everyone looked towards the sound and saw Matt standing up. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Matt walked up to Ethan. Ethan, you won this round. But remember, no one wins forever. Matt leaned in closer, his voice icy cold. I will remember everything you gave me today. Someday, you will pay the price for this. Ethan's expression remained unchanged, showing no fear. Is that so? Then I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't ever challenge me. Matt's eyes looked ready to spew fire, but reason prevailed over emotion. He scoffed coldly and walked straight out of the conference room. With Matt's departure, the power struggle within the conference room finally came to an end. Ethan was the sole winner, and Matt was left with nothing. God Ford, oh no, President Ford. Zach Bell smiled at Ethan. Haha, Zach, starting today, you need to get back to work, right? Ethan turned back and laughed. Of course. Zach nodded vigorously. After the meeting ended, Ross transferred the personnel brought from West Ford Group into Arctic Systems to take full control. In Xavier Yale's office, Xavier was already packing his personal belongings. Ross walked in with his people and ordered directly, Xavier, before you leave, hand over all the data and files in your possession. Don't leave anything out. Xavier gave a miserable smile. Was he going to be squeezed dry of even his last bit of utility? All right. Ross pushed up his glasses. Good. I trust you'll cooperate. I wish you a bright future. Ross's words were like arrows piercing his heart. Xavier was so angry he almost vomited blood, but anger was meaningless now. Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Ross smiled, turned, and left the office to continue arranging the handover for various departments. Meanwhile, in the CEO's office, Steve Foster and Gary Fisher raised their teacups to toast Ethan. Congratulations, Mr. Ford. Ethan smiled. He knew these old foxes weren't genuinely congratulating him. They just followed whoever was winning. But now he had complete control of Arctic Systems. Through the 51% shares from the VM agreement, plus Matt and Xavier's equity, he now held a total of 65% of the company. Next, it was Steve and Gary's turn. I have to thank you both for your support. Ethan raised his cup and clinked it with theirs. Then, changing the subject, he asked, Gentlemen, When will the equity buyback be executed? Steve's expression changed. He hadn't expected Ethan to be so direct, forcing them to hand over their remaining equity right after kicking Matt out. But with his leverage in Ethan's hands, he had no choice. Mr. For this. We can start today, Steve laughed dryly. Ethan nodded and smiled. Great. I'll give you 3 days to prepare. Steve looked a bit grim, but forced a smile and nodded. It was his first time encountering such a domineering leader. Ethan was far more assertive than Matt. Seeing their unhappy expressions, Ethan laughed. Haha, gentlemen, there's no need to be so depressed, is there? What you lose on the swings, you gain on the roundabouts. I am still very keen on continuing our cooperation with United Telecom and Summit Capital. You've already made a twofold return on your investment in Arctic Systems. This deal isn't a loss at all, and in the future, I will help you earn even more in other fields. Far more than you would have made in Arctic Systems. Steve and Gary were dumbfounded, looking at each other, unsure of what Ethan meant. Ethan sat up straight on the sofa, tapped the table, and said, Gentlemen, I have other projects that I can let you participate in. I'll allow you to invest, and the returns will be more certain and larger than investing in Arctic Systems. This is also my show of sincerity in hoping for continued cooperation. Ethan was using the stick and carrot approach. First, show them his power and capability, then offer a sweet deal to bind their interests together. Without a doubt, United Telecom and Summit Capital, with their massive investment capital, were partners Ethan wanted. Hearing this, Gary felt a stir of interest. Mr. Ford, what project? He didn't agree immediately, but he was intrigued. Ethan took a sip of tea and smiled. I'm planning to auction for a vanadium mine in Big Rock, Fulton. The proven reserves of this mine are currently 100,000 tons, possibly higher. Based on our market forecast for vanadium, the current price is $12,000 per ton. The base production value alone reaches over $75 million. And I predict vanadium prices will continue to rise, at least doubling, maybe more. However, to redevelop and utilize, it requires an upfront capital injection. To win the auction and rebuild the mine, I estimate we need another $10 million. I believe you two will be interested. A gleam flashed in Steve's eyes. Resource investment was indeed a solid moneymaker, especially rare resources. But the barrier to entry was extremely high. Without special connections and resources, typical capital couldn't get its hands on such things. He had to admit, he was genuinely tempted. He didn't know how Ethan had secured this resource, but given Ethan's methods and capabilities, it wasn't surprising. After seeing him take down Matt, he had zero doubts about Ethan's ability. Mr. Ford, I'm indeed interested. How much do we need to invest? And how much can we get? Steve asked directly. Ethan looked at them and smiled. $4.5 million from each party. You get 20% equity. Based on production value, the annual profit share would exceed $15 million. Gary suddenly asked coldly, It certainly looks profitable, but Mr. Ford, you can make this money yourself. Why share with us? Steve nodded. With Ethan's strength, raising a few million, even through bank loans, wouldn't be difficult. Why share this fat piece of meat? There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. If there was, it was poisoned. Ethan laughed heartily. After a moment, he said, There is no end to making money. Isn't it better to make some money together? I hope for deeper cooperation with United Telecom and Summit Capital in the future. You can consider this project a meeting gift from me to you both. Gary was stunned, then quickly understood Ethan's meaning. Ethan was eyeing the capital held by Summit Capital and wanted to use the vanadium mine project to build a bridge to that investment capital. Neither Gary Fisher nor Steve Foster spoke immediately. Both were weighing Ethan's words, considering the benefits and risks. Gary, in particular, wanted a piece of this lucrative pie, but having witnessed Ethan's methods, he actually feared him more. Cooperating with Ethan felt a bit like negotiating with a tiger. Steve pondered for a moment before saying, Mr. Ford, I may need to discuss this with the other senior executives at the company. He didn't agree immediately. Gary nodded, chiming in, Yes, Mr. Ford, this project is indeed excellent, but we don't have the authority to decide alone. It needs to go through proper due diligence before we can put it on the agenda. Ethan shrugged and smiled. No problem. Major investments should be treated with caution. I'll have Wayne coordinate with you for the due diligence later. I believe we will reach a cooperation agreement, won't we? In certain aspects, we are the same kind of people. The similarity Ethan referred to was the pursuit of profit. All three of them sitting there were profit seekers, especially Summit Capital and United Telecom, who controlled capital. They were pure profit-driven entities, frantically seeking to extract every penny, eyeing profit like wolves eyeing fresh meat. Ethan didn't deny that he was profit-driven. On the contrary, he was very much so, but his purpose differed from theirs. He wanted controllable capital, not to be turned into a beast by it. Capital shouldn't serve individuals or small cliques, but the country and its people. Ethan understood that no matter how fast West Ford Group grew, for now, and for a long time to come, it couldn't compare to enterprises with massive capital reserves. To achieve industrial upgrading and develop technology for the nation, he had to leverage and utilize this capital. He had to cooperate with it to achieve his goals. Take the semiconductor industry investment, for example. To revitalize the long-declining semiconductor industry, the funding required wasn't in the tens or hundreds of millions, but hundreds of billions. And that didn't include the incalculable costs needed for talent acquisition. West Ford Group alone couldn't achieve this goal. He needed support from within the system and cooperation from capital. Through multi-party cooperation, he would build a giant ship capable of riding the wind and waves. West Ford Group would be the steering wheel, and he would be the captain controlling it. In his past life, even with nearly $100 billion in assets, he realized at the moment of his death that personal wealth, even in the trillions, was nothing but fleeting clouds. It had no value to him then, which was why he had been willing to donate his entire fortune to the country and the poor. In this life, he wanted to realize a grander ambition, to help his nation stand at the peak of the world once again. This was his purpose for seeking profit, the meaning of his existence in this world. Ethan took out a pack of Parliament cigarettes and offered them to the two men. "I await your good news." Steve took a cigarette and smiled. "You'll have it, Mr. Ford, huh?" Gary took a cigarette, but stood up to light Ethan's first, then his own, smiling. "Indeed, it is our honor to do business and be friends with Mr. Ford." With that one sentence, the relationship between the three was defined as friends. Ethan was secretly amused. Sure enough, there are no eternal friends in this world, only eternal interests. When interests align, you are friends. Knock, knock, knock. A knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Ethan said. Ross opened the door and entered, bowing slightly to Ethan. "Mr. Ford, the handover is complete." Ethan nodded, stood up, and smiled. "Good, let's head out." They left the office together and went to the main lobby of Arctic Systems, where all department employees and supervisors had gathered. The moment Ethan appeared, everyone's eyes converged on him. Every Arctic employee understood that this young man before them was their new boss. "Hello, President Ford." The Arctic executives, including Zach Bell, Zane King, and Danny, greeted him one after another. Ethan looked around at the hundreds of employees and smiled. "I am very happy to assume the position of CEO of Arctic Systems. I believe that as long as we work together, our company will achieve long-term development and reach our goals step by step. I am certain that day will come." Thunderous applause erupted in the room. A smile appeared on Zach Bell's face. He believed that Arctic Systems would surely become stronger under Ethan's leadership. Over the next 3 days, Ethan arranged the follow-up development strategy and planning for Arctic Systems, as well as the resource integration and docking with West Ford Group, with Zane King responsible for execution. This included developing the IceQ Zones games, further developing IceQ avatars to provide more social functions for the messenger, and enhancing the value of the IceQ Premium membership to achieve continuous subscriber growth. After arranging everything, Ethan and Wayne returned to Chicago and back to school. It was already night when Ethan returned to campus. Just as he got back to his dorm, he received a call from Grace Miller. Seeing the caller ID, a happy smile curled on Ethan's lips as he answered. "Hey, Gracie, miss me?" "Miss you? In your dreams, you jerk." "Ethan, you went to New York to play for so many days before coming back." "Humph." Grace's crisp, melodious voice came from the other end. "Hey, I was supposed to be back sooner, but something unexpected came up and delayed me," Ethan explained with a smile. On the other end, in the girls' dormitory, Grace lay on her bed, swinging her pale legs, pouting. "All right, I know you're a busy man. I didn't want to disturb your work, but I missed you." At that moment, Chloe Jones, who was also in the dorm, mimicked Grace's plaintive tone. "I missed you." "Ha ha." Laughter erupted in the dorm. Grace's pretty face flushed red. She rolled her eyes at her roommates, but ignored their teasing. "Stinky, Ethan. I'm going to show you something tomorrow noon. You'll definitely be happy," Grace said, keeping it a mystery. Ethan teased. "What is it?" "A pregnancy test report." Grace's cheeks turned bright red. She spat. "It is not. You wish. It's my villa design plan." Ethan feigned disappointment. "Is that so? What a pity. Looks like I'll have to try harder. Grace blushed down to her neck. Knock it off. I am not talking to you anymore. I'll see you tomorrow. After hanging up, Grace hugged her pillow and rolled over, feeling her cheeks burn. Ooh, our little Gracie's face is so red. Chloe walked over with a face mask on, teasing her. It is not. Grace denied profusely, her face crimson. That jerk Ethan, does he want to be a dad that badly? Isn't that a bit too early? Why am I thinking about this? Grace buried her face in the pillow. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed and laughed. All right, I won't tease you, but I think you and Ethan should lock things down sooner rather than later. A guy as excellent as Ethan must have tons of girls swarming around him. Aren't you worried at all? Worried? Not a chance, Grace declared, lifting her chin arrogantly. She never worried about such things and absolutely trusted Ethan. If two people in love couldn't trust each other, the relationship existed in name only. Chloe reached out to pinch her cute cheek. Oh my, our little Gracie is so confident. Grace countered, why don't you worry about Wayne? Chloe's eyes widened. He wouldn't dare. Grace covered her mouth and laughed. True. Tank is completely wrapped around your finger. Chloe huffed and smiled. Of course. Even if he had the nerve of a bear or leopard, he wouldn't dare flirt with other girls. By the way, Grace, did you finish the design for the villa? Grace pulled a sketchbook from her drawer, beaming. Of course, it's all in here. The preliminary draft. I'll show it to Ethan tomorrow. Nice work, Gracie. That was fast. Let me see. Chloe asked curiously. Grace hugged the sketchbook protectively and shook her head. This is just a draft, not the final version. Ethan hasn't seen it yet. I'll show everyone once we finalize it. Save you from chiming in with all sorts of opinions and messing up my flow. Chloe shrugged and laughed. Fine, I won't look. But let me give you a heads up. The easiest place for couples to have conflict is over renovation designs. Think about it. Renovation is a big deal with tons of details. If two people disagree on certain details, it's easy to get into a fight. Grace asked in surprise, is that a thing? Absolutely. Chloe nodded with great certainty. Grace asked suspiciously, how do you know? That's how it always goes in TV shows. Chloe stated matter-of-factly, Grace, I can't be bothered with you. The next day at noon, students poured out of the academic buildings after morning classes, heading to the cafeteria in twos and threes. At the computer science building, Grace stood downstairs, holding her sketchbook with both hands, looking lovely as she waited for Ethan to get out of class. The CS department at Illinois Tech was famous for being a monastery. Mostly guys, very few girls. So when Grace stood there wearing a cute, preppy blue dress, she attracted the attention of numerous students. The head turn rate was 100%. Whoa, is that beauty? You don't know? That's Grace Miller, the campus queen of Illinois Tech. TSK. So pretty. If I had a girlfriend that beautiful, I'd give up 10 years of my life. Wake up, bro. Even if you died, you wouldn't get a girlfriend that pretty. You bastard. I don't care. That's exactly my type. Haha, keep dreaming. Miss Campus Queen has a boyfriend. Heartbreak. Who's her boyfriend? Is he as handsome as me? A group of guys stood not far away, staring and gossiping. Grace simply tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eliciting a chorus of howls. Suddenly, the guys saw Grace look toward the building, jumping up and down in place, looking very happy. Everyone followed her gaze and saw a handsome young man in a white shirt appear downstairs. Ethan, Grace cheered and ran over in front of everyone, throwing her arms around the young man in the white shirt. The young man lifted her up and spun her around in a circle, their intimacy on full display. Oh, my goddess! The group of guys was instantly petrified, the sound of hearts breaking audible in the air. After landing, Grace naturally hugged Ethan's arm and smiled faintly. Master 4, let's go, I'm starving. All right, you glutton. Let's go eat on the second floor of the cafeteria. Ethan patted her head affectionately. Hey, what are you holding? Grace played mysterious. Oops, I'll show you when we get to the table. Ethan guessed what it was with one look. He knew from last night's call, but he let her pretend. Okay, let's go. By the way, the drama club has an exchange event this afternoon. Remember to participate. Grace pulled him along. I know, Your Highness. As the two walked away, the group of guys behind them cast looks of envy, jealousy, and hate at Ethan. One guy gritted his teeth. I have to say, I'm jealous. The campus queen. On the way, Ethan and Grace walked under the shade of the trees, chatting. Hey, idiot, move. Move. Several guys on skateboards came speeding down the slope ahead. The leader, a young man who couldn't quite control his direction, was heading straight for Ethan. Seeing the skateboarder about to crash into him, Ethan subconsciously dodged. The skater missed Ethan, but tripped over a pothole on the sidewalk behind him. Ouch. F. The skater cried out in pain, falling flat on his back. Cody, are you okay? The guys behind him hurried forward to help him up. The skater rubbed his waist and glared angrily at Ethan. S, are you blind? Ethan glanced at him. This is a sidewalk. Isn't that your problem? The skater, unconvinced, cursed, Idiot, so what if it's a sidewalk? You were blocking my line. Ethan shook his head, finding it amusing. You're really unreasonable. The sidewalk isn't a place for you to skateboard. F. The skater had a bad temper. Seeing he couldn't win with words, he rushed over in a rage and grabbed Ethan by the collar. This scene caused the surrounding students to stop and watch, but no one dared to intervene. I think you need a beating. The skater glared viciously at Ethan. Ethan remained unmoved, his expression calm. He had seen plenty of storms. A small scene like this didn't scare him. You'd better let go. Ethan looked at him indifferently. The skater yanked again, provoking him. What if I don't? His 5 friends also surrounded them, wanted to back up the skater. Just as Ethan was about to react, Grace suddenly grabbed the skater's arm. Her pretty eyes flashed coldly. Let go. Little girl, get lost. The skater impatiently tried to shake off Grace's hand. Ethan. Wow, this kid is asking for it. Anyone who treated Grace like that never met a good end. Sure enough, the next moment, Grace huffed. She grabbed the skater by both shoulders and delivered a powerful knee strike. In severe pain, the skater didn't even have time to scream before Grace executed a shoulder throw. Thud! The skater hit the ground heavily, followed by a miserable howl. Grace clapped her hands and declared arrogantly, "No one bullies my man but me." After speaking, Grace patted Ethan on the shoulder. Don't be afraid, Ethan. At school, I got you covered. Ethan twitched the corner of his mouth. Indeed, at school, Gracie was the boss. Gracie, you're amazing. Of course. You think my judo black belt is for show? Grace laughed, hands on her hips. One of the guys saw the skater get hit and lunged at Grace to retaliate. But Grace was no pushover. She tripped him up and then tossed him out with the momentum. Whoa. The crowd of onlookers erupted in an uproar. Holy S. That beauty is fierce. Badass. Valkyrie. What a cool girl. Gasps of amazement came from the crowd, all shocked by Grace's skill. No one had ever seen such a beautiful girl be so tough. Even 4 or 5 ordinary guys probably wouldn't be her match. Seeing how formidable Grace was, the remaining guys didn't dare move forward. There was even fear in their eyes. Grace clapped her hands, raised her chin, and asked, "Anyone else?" They remained silent. Grace picked up her sketchbook from the ground, hooked her other arm through Ethan's, and warned them, "You don't look like students from this school. But when you come to Illinois Tech, don't be too arrogant and don't mess with my man. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Ethan, let's go." Ethan laughed dryly. Okay, let's go. Ignore them. He had intended to teach these punks a lesson, but before he could lift a finger, Grace had taken care of everything. Just like that, Grace and Ethan left gracefully under the admiring gazes of many students. The skater lifted his head, staring at Ethan's back, and cursed, "Damn it, a guy who mooches off women and hides behind them. F. Don't let me catch you alone next time." Ethan and Grace went to the second floor of the cafeteria to eat. It was less crowded there, and they found a secluded table. After ordering, Grace finally showed the villa design to Ethan. "Stinky Ethan, look, I put a lot of effort into this." Ethan opened the book. Sure enough, it was the villa design, complete from the overall exterior shape to the interior layout. When Ethan saw the interior decoration design, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. Grace's design was very minimalist, using lighting to create a warm atmosphere. It had a design aesthetic that transcended time. "This is great. Wow, I really couldn't tell you had this talent, Gracie. It looks amazing. This style is considered minimalist. Who did you learn from?" After being praised, Grace smiled even more happily. "Who did I learn from? Don't you know? I learned from you, of course. What did you just call it? Minimalist style? That name fits perfectly. I'm adopting it." Ethan was amazed. Grace had designed this without any prior concept. Her talent in design was truly strong. She could design the company headquarters in the future. "Learn from me? Did I teach you?" Ethan asked curiously. Grace said proudly, "I found inspiration from your company's renovation. Can't I figure it out myself?" Ethan couldn't help but give her a thumbs up in admiration. "Gracie, you really are a genius." Grace covered her mouth and laughed. "You're just sweet-talking." She really liked this minimalist style. It was simple, fashionable, durable, and warm. It was their future home, so it had to feel like a home, returning to the philosophy of life. Life was inherently about the daily routine, the essentials, the person you are with, and a happy family. She had racked her brains to create the home of her imagination, spending almost every day fantasizing about living in it with Ethan. Ethan, don't you have any opinions after looking at it? Grace asked doubtfully. Just as Chloe had said, couples were bound to have opinions about renovation matters. She wanted to know if Ethan would have any too. Ethan said seriously, I do. Grace's heart skipped a beat. Had Chloe actually predicted this? What opinion do you have? Where do you want to change it? Grace asked in succession. Ethan held her hand and said solemnly, my opinion is, you need to stay up less late in the future. Don't ruin your health doing this. You weren't sleeping in the middle of the night before because you were working on this design, right? Otherwise, it would be impossible for you to come up with these drafts in such a short time. Gracie, I don't want you to work too hard. Hearing this, Grace felt waves of warmth surge in her heart, and her nose tingled. In fact, at least you know what's good for you. All right, I know. Grace pecked him on the cheek. Stinky Ethan, he's really good. Ethan touched his cheek and grinned foolishly. Hee, is this the reward? Just this tiny bit? Grace blushed and rolled her eyes at him. Is that not enough? Ethan shook his head decisively. Not enough. With that, Ethan leaned in and kissed her. Lips meeting, Grace's eyes went wide instantly, frozen on the spot. Ethan plundered to his heart's content before finally letting her go, satisfied. Grace's face was beet red. She turned her head to scan the cafeteria, relieved to find no one paying them any attention. Stinky Ethan, how dare you molest me in public? You're asking for a beating. Her small fists rained down on Ethan's arm, annoyed and shy. Ethan grinned wickedly. So that means if it's not in public, I can? Bad guy. No, you can't. Grace pouted, acting arrogant. Ethan laughed. That won't be up to you when the time comes. I'm ignoring you. I am going to get food. Grace turned her blushing face away and left. Ethan was in a great mood. Teasing Gracie every day was such a joy. Suddenly, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw it was Henry Payne calling. So he answered. Hey, Henry, what's up? Boss, do you have time this weekend? I have some things I want to discuss with you. It's about Boss Vane's matters. Henry's low voice came through the phone. Ethan frowned slightly. What is it? Is it about the restructuring of the estate? Henry was the type to try his best to solve problems himself first. If he could solve it, he would never trouble Ethan. If he was calling to discuss it, he must have encountered something beyond his control. Recently, Henry had been organizing and restructuring Victor Vane's estate. According to Ethan's instructions, the goal was to legitimize Victor's businesses, or at least compartmentalize the risks. He guessed it was about the restructuring problems. Henry replied, Yeah, boss. The businesses Boss Vane left behind are a bit complex. Sorting them out is tricky, and some people have opinions. They don't agree with divesting the assets, and they want a bigger cut. They are Boss Vane's old brothers. I can't make a decision right away. Because of the opposition, the restructuring has stalled. I'm sorry, boss. I failed to complete the mission properly. In the end, Henry's tone held a hint of apology and self-blame, something he rarely showed. Ethan thought for a moment. He already had a rough idea of what was going on, but it couldn't be explained clearly over the phone. No need to apologize. I understand your position. From your perspective, you have to consider Valerie and the others, as well as Boss Vane's other brothers. It's normal to face such a dilemma, Ethan reassured him. Thanks, boss, Henry said gratefully, his heart warming that Ethan didn't blame him for not getting it done. Ethan laughed. Thanks for what? Listen, don't wait for the weekend. Come find me at the school tomorrow night. I'll take you out for some good food. Okay. Henry breathed a sigh of relief and laughed. As they chatted, Grace returned with the food. Ethan, who was that? Grace asked curiously. Ethan hung up the phone and smiled. It was Henry. I'm meeting him tomorrow night to talk about some things. Grace put down the tray, pinched his nose, and said, You. Not a day goes by where you aren't busy. But promise me, drink less. Ethan made a funny face at her. Yes, ma'am. Grace covered her mouth and burst out laughing. Don't call me ma'am. I'm not that old. Eat your food. She sat down and suddenly asked, Is the drama club exchange event this afternoon? Ethan nodded as he ate. Yeah, it's an exchange with the UIC drama club. As vice president, I'm fully in charge. Grace's eyes widened. What about President Hall? He's not doing anything. Ethan chuckled. Right now, he's basically dumped all the club work on me. Now, I'm the one calling the shots in the drama club. Grace rolled her eyes and teased. Calling the shots? You'll just be busy. Ethan smiled confidently. How busy can managing a small club be? I'm definitely getting those club credits. What about you, Gracie? Getting used to the student council? Grace pouted. All I do in the student council is grunt work. What's there to get used to? It was clear she wasn't very satisfied with her current work in the student council. Ethan knew she had always wanted to do something for the school and the student council to elevate her status internally, but she never knew where to start. This didn't surprise him at all, because Grace wasn't good at dealing with people, especially in the student council, which was known as a mini bureaucracy. Most people there were shrewd operators. How could Grace compete? Hey, relax. As long as you get the credits, it's fine. Don't rush. You can always move up when you're a sophomore. Ethan comforted her. At 4 p.m., inside the drama club, Grace arrived at the club first and was sitting in a lounge drinking coffee with Chloe Jones. Thanks to Ethan's investment, the drama club's warehouse had been renovated. It was no longer a messy space, but a tidy, beautiful, and stylish club center. Ethan had successfully gained control of the club because of this. In addition to the large rehearsal room, the activity center also had a lounge, changing rooms, equipment rooms, and other functional areas. TSK, the drama club has really changed completely. Chloe looked around and sighed. Grace rested her chin in her hands, smiling proudly. Of course, Master Ford's masterpiece. Chloe chuckled softly. That's Ethan's strong ability. What ability? Grace turned her head to ask. Cash. The ability of cash. Chloe quipped. Grace. You have a point. Chloe asked curiously. Grace, tell me, for Ethan to spend money like this, how much has he actually made? Grace tapped her chin, thinking for a moment. I never asked him, but I guess. Maybe 5 or 6 million. 7 million? There should be that much. Maybe a bit less. So why ask me? How would I know? Chloe nodded and said seriously, I think maybe more. 10 million? Wow, that's amazing. Just as they were chatting, 2 girls walked in. Hello, excuse me. Is this the Illinois Tech Drama Club? One of the pretty girls asked. Grace turned around and looked towards a voice. She saw a girl wearing a floral short skirt, with shoulder-length hair, an oval face, and willow leaf eyebrows. The girl had an elegant and graceful temperament. Just one look made a lasting impression. Grace was stunned when she saw her. It's you. The short-haired girl also saw Grace and looked surprised. Grace! Oh, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to run into you here. Grace stood up and looked carefully at the girl in front of her. For some reason, she felt a strange feeling she couldn't quite describe. Like a bit of discomfort. She didn't understand where this feeling came from. Yes, Lucy. Grace smiled with pursed lips. Are you guys from the UIC Drama Club? Lucy Yates nodded, tucked her shoulder-length hair behind her ear, and smiled. Yes. The club said the exchange is today. We finished class early, so we came over to take a look first. We asked around all the way here, but as soon as I walked in, I saw how nice this venue is. I couldn't quite believe it, so I came to ask. Grace realized, I see. You're in the right place. This is the drama club. Welcome. Lucy smiled, stared at Grace, and extended her hand. Thank you. Grace looked at the extended hand, hesitated for a moment, then shook it. You're welcome. Have a seat first. I'll get you some water. Grace let go, turned to pour tea, and Chloe followed to help. Lily Chow looked at Grace's back and whispered, See, that's Ethan Ford's girlfriend. Pretty, isn't she? Lucy nodded and smiled. She is quite pretty, but she's quite simple. Just pretty, that's all. Lily Chow covered her mouth and snickered. Lucy, you aren't jealous of her, are you? But I have to admit you're right. Lucy smiled. I'm a little envious. So beautiful, and she has such a great boyfriend. Isn't she a winner in life? Lily pinched her cheek. I think you're not bad yourself. Some things, if you want them, you have to fight for them yourself. Lucy shook her head and laughed. Are you joking? Lily put her hand on Lucy's shoulder. I'm not joking. This is the philosophy of life. Spare me your philosophy. Lucy swatted her hand away, smiling. I'm telling you, once a person has desire, it can't be stopped, Lily stated firmly. Lucy, don't you find that handsome guy, Ethan, charming? He's handsome, has a good temper, and is rich. I heard from friends at Illinois Tech that Ethan is worth at least 10 million. Who wouldn't like a man like that? You've only seen him a few times, and you can't forget him. I understand you. Saying that, Lily winked at her. Who can't forget him? Don't talk nonsense. A blush appeared on Lucy's cheeks, and she quickly denied it. But Ethan's figure had already surfaced in her mind. Don't deny it. I understand those thoughts of yours. Lily saw right through her. Lucy, listen to your sister. Some things you could try to fight for. If you fight, maybe there's a chance. If you don't, there isn't even a 1% chance. Lucy rolled her eyes at her. I can't be bothered with you. She sat down, but Lily's words kept swirling in her mind. Tea is here. Enjoy. Grace and Chloe brought over 2 cups of tea. Lucy looked up at Grace and smiled. Thank you. You're welcome. You're guests, after all. Grace gave a sweet smile. Seeing that simple smile, Lucy couldn't help but curl her lips. Indeed, just pretty. Was this Illinois Tech campus queen merely a beautiful vase? She didn't know, but dealing with someone like this was easy. Grace, we noticed the renovation here is quite nice when we came in. Your drama club benefits are really good. Ours at UIC is different. Just a small, broken room. Lucy looked around enviously. Chloe laughed smugly. Hee hee. That's because our club has a big boss. Boss for it, huh? Ethan paid for it? Then he really is quite wealthy, Lucy said enviously. Grace tugged at Chloe's arm, signaling her not to be too showy, then smiled. Don't listen to her nonsense. It's just, the conditions are a bit better. Lucy smiled non-committally. Have a seat. Before the exchange starts, how about you share some interesting stories about your drama troupe? That way I can learn more in advance. Grace hesitated for a moment, but sat down. Subsequently, Lucy led the conversation, chatting from the history of the drama club's formation to the newly appointed vice president, Ethan. When Grace didn't want to chat, Chloe was already chatting excitedly, talking nonstop. The topic of conversation was controlled by Lucy. Slowly, Grace could only listen from the side, occasionally chiming in with a few sentences. She felt something was off. Was Lucy a little too interested in Ethan's affairs? Am I overthinking it? Grace didn't know, but subconsciously, she kept her distance from Lucy. The four chatted for over half an hour. The UIC Drama Club members arrived one after another, and the Illinois Tech members were all present as well. Suddenly, a commotion sounded at the door. Hey, President Ford, have you had dinner? President Ford is so handsome. The club members started cheering. The UIC members and team leaders also went forward to greet Ethan, exchanging pleasantries. Hey, Grace, looks like your boyfriend is here. Chloe pulled Grace up from her seat. Grace walked out the door and looked out. Sure enough, she saw Ethan's figure walking towards them. Suddenly, another figure appeared beside her. It was Lucy. Lucy leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, staring intently at Ethan as he approached. Ethan had a clean and handsome face, wearing a warm smile that seemed capable of melting ice and snow, making people addicted to looking at him. Lily leaned in and whispered in Lucy's ear, "Look at you. You said you weren't fascinated, but your eyes are about to pop out." Lucy snapped back to reality, her cheeks slightly flushed, but she still rationally denied it. What nonsense, I am not. As they spoke, Ethan had already walked over. Grace opened her arms to welcome him. Stinky Ethan, why are you only here now? Had some business to take care of. Ethan patted her head. At this moment, Ethan naturally noticed Lucy standing at the door, and his brows furrowed slightly. Why is she here too? Hello, Ethan. Lucy tucked her shoulder-length hair behind her ear and extended her hand with a smile. Ethan's expression was calm. He didn't extend his hand. Instead, he asked, "Why are you here?" Lucy was slightly embarrassed and teased, "What is Mr. Ford not welcoming me?" As she spoke, she glanced at Grace, who was holding Ethan's arm. Maybe there is some misunderstanding between us that makes Mr. Ford distance himself from me, but I don't understand what exactly that misunderstanding is. Lucy withdrew her hand and narrowed her eyes at Ethan. We don't seem to have any bad blood, do we? On the contrary, running into each other several times in such a big university town. Doesn't that count as fate? Grace's delicate brows furrowed slightly, a trace of suspicion rising in her heart. A woman's sixth sense told her that this Lucy seemed to have some ideas about Ethan. She turned to look at Ethan. Seeing his calm expression, she felt a bit more reassured and squeezed his hand. Ethan smiled faintly and said indifferently, "It doesn't count. You're overthinking it, Miss Yates." Everyone present looked stunned. This answer was direct and gave her absolutely no face. Chloe also reacted, looking Lucy up and down with ill intent. "Miss Yates, his girlfriend is right here. Fate or whatever. Be careful. Our Gracie might get jealous." Lucy smiled gracefully. Haha. Sorry, I was just joking. Grace, please don't take it to heart. Grace was at a loss for words, not knowing how to reply. Whatever she said seemed inappropriate. At this moment, she felt that the girl in front of her wasn't as innocent as she appeared. Suddenly, Ethan held her hand and said dotingly, "My Gracie wouldn't get jealous." Grace froze, understanding Ethan's meaning. She nodded and gave a proud smile. "Stinky Ethan, at least you know the score." The couple's sweetness made the bystanders envious, except for Lucy. Mr. Ford really spoils his girlfriend. Truly a good man. Lucy pursed her lips and smiled. Average, third best in the world. If there's nothing else, let's start the activity. Ethan waved his hand. The exchange between the UIC Drama Club and the Illinois Tech Drama Club was about acting, rehearsing, and organizational management. Throughout the exchange, Ethan didn't even give Lucy a direct look, focusing entirely on the work. Halfway through hosting the event, Ethan went to use the restroom. Just as he came out, he ran into Lucy. She was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, seemingly waiting for him. Ethan, I'm very curious. Why? Do you always seem to be avoiding me on purpose? I'm not a man-eating monster, am I? Or where did I offend you? If I don't figure this out, I won't be able to sleep all night. Lucy stared at him intently. Ethan pulled out a paper towel to dry his hands and said indifferently, You're overthinking it. We aren't close. We weren't close before, and we won't be close in the future. Then the first time you saw me, why did you? Lucy pressed. A woman's intuition was usually accurate. She felt Ethan was hiding something. But before she could finish, Ethan interrupted her. That was just a misunderstanding. Nothing more. Ethan smiled. Facing Lucy again, he had completely let go. Since he was reborn, and they hadn't known each other in this life, everything was just fleeting smoke. He didn't want to know why Lucy had betrayed him, nor did he want to delve into what kind of complex woman she was. It was all meaningless. Is that so? But I feel like you know me, Lucy guessed. Ethan threw away the paper towel. Sorry, that's just your own delusion. I hope you stop pestering about these questions. We shouldn't have any intersection to begin with. All right, if there's nothing else, I should go back to keep my girlfriend company. With that, Ethan walked straight out. As they passed each other, Lucy felt a chill, biting and cold. She turned around, watching Ethan's retreating back, and frowned. A while later, Lily walked in and whispered with a laugh. Tisque Lucy, I told you that you had your eyes on Boss Ford, and you wouldn't admit it? All right, I get it. I can understand. Who wouldn't love such an excellent guy? Lucy remained silent, looking a bit dazed. Since meeting Ethan, her originally calm heart was in turmoil. Lily laughed. Although he has a girlfriend, there's no wall in the world that can't be dug through. You have to try everything. Hee, don't worry, I'll help you. Lucy shook her head. You, just so your mouth shut. I can't be bothered with you. Saying that, she turned and left. Lily curled her lips into a smile. This girl is really stubborn. After the exchange event ended, the sky had already darkened. Ethan saw off the UIC club members and then walked Grace back to her dorm. Shoulder to shoulder, holding hands, they strolled through the quiet campus at night, the streetlights stretching their shadows long. Stinky Ethan, do you know that girl Lucy from UIC? You aren't allowed to lie to me. My intuition is very accurate. Grace lifted her head and suddenly asked Ethan. Ethan thought for a moment and laughed. What? Are you really jealous? I'm not jealous. I just think that girl's attitude towards you is weird. She seems to have taken a liking to you. Grace voiced her intuition. Ethan patted her head and smiled narcissistically. Your boyfriend is so handsome. Isn't it normal to be liked? Huh? Grace rolled her eyes. I'm so narcissistic. Ethan put his arm around her shoulder. All right. I've only met her a few times. We aren't close. Are you relieved now? She finally broke into a smile, stood on her tiptoes, and pecked him on the cheek. Fine. Seeing that you kept your virtue, I'll reluctantly reward you. Ethan licked the corner of his mouth and smiled wickedly. Seeing that you understand me so well, I'll reward you too. No, I don't want your reward. You have to take it even if you don't want it. Gracie, don't run. Stinky Ethan, why are you tickling me? Ha! Gracie, stop right there. Blay, I won't. Chasing and playing, their sweet laughter echoed along the tree-lined paths of the campus. The next evening, Ethan met Henry Payne for dinner at an outdoor grill joint. The food street at the back door of Illinois Tech was crowded with students out for a stroll, and a bite once night fell, though the grill joint only had a few occupied tables. Spending at the grill was considered high consumption for ordinary students. Only those with better family backgrounds would likely come here. Boss, the usual. Brisket sliders, oysters, and serve whatever fresh seafood you have. 6 dishes for 2 people. Bring a pitcher of iced tea first. Ethan walked into the grill and shouted to a middle-aged owner. He had been to the shop many times and was familiar with the owner. The middle-aged owner was named Old Joe. He was balding, wore a yellowed undershirt, and had a round belly. He looked unkempt, but don't let his appearance fool you. He was a genuine chef from a culinary capital. His skills were top-notch, and his reputation was well known. Because the owner's cooking was excellent, Ethan had become a regular. Old Joe laughed in response. Handsome guy's here. All right, go find a seat. I got it. Ethan found a seat. A waiter quickly brought the iced tea pitcher and cups. Ethan poured a glass and waited for Henry to arrive. Suddenly, the roar of motorcycle engines sounded. A group of young men rode their bikes up to the entrance of the grill, many of them carrying skateboards. Boss, bring up the grilled fish first, and 2 cases of beer. The leading young man shouted. troubling Cody to treat us again. Cody is rich. The group of young men behind him cheered and flattered him. The young man, surnamed Cole, held a skateboard in one hand, a smile on his face, looking somewhat smug. He enjoyed everyone's flattery very much. Surrounded by the crowd, he walked into the shop. Just as he entered, he suddenly stopped. He saw Ethan sitting in the corner, and his face instantly darkened. I actually ran into him again. Holy crap, Cody, isn't that the kid from yesterday over there? A guy next to Cody Cole also noticed Ethan. Cody huffed, remembering how he was thrown to the ground by a girl yesterday. He couldn't hold on to his dignity. It was too humiliating. Now that the kid was alone, the time for payback had come. Boys, let's go. Let's have a chat with him. Cody waved his hand and led the group over. This group was aggressive, quickly attracting the attention of other customers in the shop who cast glances their way. Damn, looks like something's about to go down. So many people here to cause trouble. Are they looking for trouble with that handsome guy? Shoo, keep it down. Don't meddle, or you'll get burned. The surrounding customers whispered among themselves. Ethan put down his teacup and noticed the group approaching. When he saw the leader, Cody Cole, he frowned slightly. Can I even eat a meal in peace? But he had seen plenty of big scenes. Facing so many people, he didn't panic at all. Instead, he calmly continued to drink his tea. Cody led his men to Ethan's table and grinned. Yo, isn't this the moocher? Hiding behind a woman. What kind of man are you? Ethan looked up at him and said calmly, Something I can help you with? Cody sneered and pulled out a chair, sitting directly in front of Ethan. Of course there is. Weren't you acting all tough yesterday? Let's see you act tough again today. Cody relied on his numbers. He had 7 or 8 brothers behind him, while Ethan was alone. He was getting his payback no matter what. Ethan smiled slightly. I have things to do today. I don't have time to play with you. If you want to eat, find another table. Ethan had absolutely no interest in these troublemaking kids and couldn't be bothered to deal with them. When a person stands at a certain height, some people just aren't worth their time anymore. Seeing Ethan act so unbothered, Cody felt ignored. Rage instantly surged in his heart, and he slammed the table. You're pretty arrogant, kid. Hearing the commotion, the grill owner, Old Joe, hurriedly ran over, trying to keep the peace. Hey, handsome guys, let's talk this out nicely. Don't be impulsive. Doing business, the worst thing was encountering trouble. Once a fight broke out, business was ruined. Cody glanced at Old Joe and said coldly, Boss, this has nothing to do with you. Go to your job. Old Joe laughed dryly. Hey, handsome, don't be so angry. This guy's a regular of mine too. If there's an issue, let's talk it out calmly. Saying that, Old Joe hurriedly walked up to Ethan and whispered with concern, Kid, don't be afraid. If something happens, you go to the back kitchen first. There's a back door. Ethan leaned back in his chair and said calmly, It's okay, Joe. Go do your work. Old Joe looked at Cody and his arrogant group, continuing to whisper, How can I not worry? These guys don't look like they're to be messed with. Maybe. You should avoid them for now. Ethan smiled and patted Joe's hand, reassuring him, Joe, don't worry about me. Just don't let this affect your business. Old man, get out of the way. The guy next to Cody was already cracking his knuckles. Old Joe rushed over again, piling on the smiles. Handsome guys, don't be impulsive. How about some tea first? Old Joe went to grab a teacup, but Cody slapped it out of his hand. Do you not understand human language? Today, I'm going to teach this kid a lesson. No one can help him. I said it. Not even Jesus. Cody stood up, walked in front of Ethan, lifted his left leg, and stomped on the chair, sneering, Kid, if you obediently crawl through here, I'll let you off this once. Ethan put down his teacup, shook his head, and laughed. Where did you learn this stuff? Bad gangster movies? What era is this? You still pull this act? Cody's face darkened. He turned around and grabbed his skateboard. His brothers behind him surrounded Ethan. Ethan narrowed his eyes, looking calm, but in his mind, he was already calculating how to take these guys down. Capture the leader first. If a fight starts, this kid is going down first. Young punks who don't know how to fight. What could they possibly do? Suddenly, from outside the shop, the roar of car engines sounded, accompanied by the honking of horns. The sudden noise broke the tense atmosphere, and everyone turned to look outside the grill. A fleet of black sedans pulled up at the entrance. There were 6 cars in total. Leading them was a black Lincoln Town car, followed by a line of black Cadillacs. These luxury cars, rarely seen on ordinary days, suddenly appeared in a group, attracting the attention of the entire street. Customers inside stood up, craning their necks to look. Cody turned around and saw this scene, stunned. Holy crap, so many luxury cars. Then, a group of men in black suits stepped out of the cars one after another. There were over a dozen of them. Among them, Two were tall and burly, with faces full of menace. Clearly not people to be trifled with. The group walked into the shop, heading straight for Ethan. Moo! A man with a notably large head and a fierce face glanced at Cody's brothers. Just a simple look made their legs go weak. Where had these young guys ever seen such a formation? Scared pale, without a word, they quickly made a path. Cody dared not block the way either. He put down his skateboard and stepped aside. Under everyone's gaze, the big-headed man walked up to Ethan and bowed respectfully. Mr. Ford. Hello, Mr. Ford. The group of men in black suits behind him greeted in unison, their voices echoing through the grill. Cody stared dumbfounded, his eyes wide with disbelief. What the hell? What is this situation? Not only was Cody cold dumbfounded, but his brothers and the other customers in the grill were also stunned. In an instant, all incredulous eyes converged on Ethan. No one expected this seemingly ordinary young man drinking tea to have such a background. To have this group of people respectfully call him Mr., he was definitely no ordinary character. The others didn't dare make a sound, but Cody began to feel incredibly anxious. What is going on? Does this kid have connections? Ethan smiled slightly and waved. Big Ed, you're here. Where's Henry? Boss, I'm here. Just grabbing some gifts for you. Henry Payne's voice sounded from behind the crowd, and then he was seen carrying items in both hands, walking over quickly. Ethan laughed dumbly. We're all family here. What gifts? Henry put down the gift box and smiled sheepishly. Hey, this was Valerie's specific order. She insisted on sending it. I had no choice. Ethan realized immediately. Valerie Vane likely wanted to send a gift as thanks. Since that was the case, Ethan didn't stand on ceremony. He smiled. All right, I received the thought. You take a return gift back some other day. Yes, boss, Henry responded. Then he turned and saw Cody and his crew, asking suspiciously, Boss, who are they? Ethan smiled. People looking for trouble. Hearing this, Henry's face instantly turned cold. He swept a glance at Cody and his men, saying coldly, Big Ed, they want to trouble Mr. Ford. You know what to do. Big Ed gave a vicious smile, rubbing his hands together. Suddenly, he spun around and slapped Cody across the face. Smack! The slap was powerful and crisp, knocking Cody directly to the ground. Cody was dizzy from the slap. He subconsciously touched his mouth. It was full of blood, and 2 teeth had fallen out. But before he could react, 2 suited thugs hoisted him up from the ground, flanking him left and right. Cody's crew was scared out of their wits. Facing Big Ed and his men, who looked like bandits from hell, they couldn't muster even a shred of desire to help Cody. Some even tried to sneak away, but before they could leave, black-suited thugs blocked their retreat. Where do you think you're going? Get back there, the thugs said coldly. The young men trying to sneak away broke out in a cold sweat and froze in place, not daring to move. These people aren't to be messed with. Damn it, we're done for. We kicked an iron plate this time. Cody was held up by the 2 thugs in front of Big Ed. Kid, you got guts. Big Ed leaned his face in close, smiling sinisterly. Cody had been too scared to look directly before, but now, focusing his eyes, he recognized the face and instantly turned pale with fright. You are Big Ed. He never expected that this bandit-like man in front of him was actually the infamous Big Ed from the streets. He had hung around the school area and knew some people. He had heard of Big Ed. The most distinct feature was his large head, very large. You could recognize him at a glance. He heard Big Ed was a famous enforcer under Victor Vane. Why was he here? Cody looked at Ethan. At this moment, his eyes revealed nothing but terror. Who exactly is this young man? Big Ed grinned, a chilling sight. You know me? Cody was almost scared to tears by that smile. No. I just heard friends mention your name, Big Ed. Big Ed sneered. Kid, do you know what to do? Saying that, Big Ed grabbed him by the collar and threw him in front of Ethan. Cody's legs had long since gone soft. With a thud, he knelt on the ground. Big bro, I didn't know who I was messing with. Please let me off. I won't dare do it again. Never again. Cody begged for mercy repeatedly, looking up at Ethan. Ethan looked unperturbed, drinking his tea without speaking. Boss, how should we handle them? Big Ed asked. Hearing the word handle, Cody thought he was done for. He hurriedly begged. No, big bro. My dad is with the Port Authority. We can talk this out. I'll pay however much you want. Hearing Port Authority, Ethan narrowed his eyes and suddenly asked, Is your dad named Director Cole? Cody was stunned, thinking Ethan had a friendship with his father. He quickly crawled forward and replied, Yes, my dad is Director Cole. Big bro, you know my dad. I know of him, but we're not close. Ethan smiled. eyes narrowing. In the entire state shipping department, the core agency was the Port Authority. This bureau didn't report to the local jurisdiction, but directly to the higher-ups. Ethan's West Forge shipyard wanted a qualification permit, but it hadn't been approved yet. And Director Cole was the top man there. Ethan knew this naturally, but he hadn't contacted the man yet. Unexpectedly, bumping into this kid today turned out to be bumping into Cole's son. Coincidence, indeed. Hearing that Ethan wasn't close with his father, Cody's face fell, and he dared not make another sound. Ethan smiled and said, "Everyone has to pay the price for their actions. No exceptions. Being young is a good thing, but young people shouldn't be too arrogant. Being too arrogant leads to trouble. You need to know that there is always someone better than you. Being low-key isn't a bad thing." Cody regretted everything now. If he had known Ethan had such a background, give him 10 times the guts, and he wouldn't have dared to do this. Yes, Big Bro is right to lecture me. I will take it to heart. I won't dare do it again. Ethan smiled and asked, "What's your name?" "C. Cody Cole." Cody replied with his head down, trembling. Ethan waved his hand and laughed. "Cody Cole, right? Go kneel over there for a while." He couldn't be bothered to argue with these young punks, but he wanted to give them a taste of hardship so they would learn a lesson. Moreover, this Cody Cole was of great use to him. The shipyard and port matters couldn't proceed without the Port Authority. That road had to be opened. Running into Cole's son this time was an opportunity. This kid looked like the type who bullied the weak and feared the strong, doing nothing all day but relying on family connections to mess around. Aside from his father's connections, this kind of person was just social scum. Ethan was too lazy to pay attention to them and had no interest in teaching them a lesson. But since Cody was Director Cole's son, the situation was different. Leave him cooling on the side for now. "Okay, kneel." Cody was confused. He wasn't beaten up, but was asked to kneel aside. He didn't know what Ethan was planning. Big Ed yanked him up and demanded, "Do you not understand human language?" Cody hurriedly responded, then led his group of friends to run to the adjacent table and kneel down together. Big Ed kicked one of the guys and cursed, "Hands on your head. No se porting yourself. If anyone's but touches the ground, I'll beat him to death." Cody and his crew were silent as cicadas in winter, doing exactly as told, not daring to resist in the slightest. With the matter settled, the customers in the shop didn't dare continue watching, afraid of causing trouble. They focused on their food, occasionally stealing glances at Ethan. Old Joe breathed a huge sigh of relief. At least a fight didn't break out. "And so, oh no, boss, I'll get back to work." Old Joe quickly corrected himself, speaking politely. Ethan nodded and smiled. "Don't be nervous, Joe. Go busy yourself. No one will dare cause trouble here in the future." Old Joe said gratefully, "Yes, thank you." After saying thanks, Old Joe turned back to work. Big Ed arranged for his brothers to watch Cody and the others, then sat down next to Ethan. "Boss, why not teach them a lesson?" Big Ed asked in a low voice. Ethan waved his hand. "Big Ed, we're legitimate people now. Once we've gone straight, we shouldn't easily get dirty again. Some things can be done without fists. Look at you. You're a property management company executive now, big or small. Can you still act like before?" Hearing this, Big Ed scratched his head with a silly smile, feeling Ethan was right. Embarrassed, he said, Yes, boss. I understand what you mean." Since Ethan arranged the restructuring of Victor Vane's industry to legitimize many things and people, Big Ed was an example. He had been assigned to manage 3 bars as general manager to gain experience before managing more properties later. In other words, Big Ed had transformed from a thug into a corporate executive. Henry saw Big Ed getting scolded and laughed. Big Ed, you better listen to Mr. Ford. Now that you're wearing a suit, don't take it off. Be dignified." Okay, I'll definitely be dignified. I swear." Big Ed quickly raised his hand. Ethan laughed. "Forget it. I guess you won't change overnight. I wouldn't believe you even if you swore 5 times. Henry, teach them some business etiquette when you have time." Henry nodded and smiled. "Will do, boss." Ethan poured tea for the 2 of them and asked Henry, "How is the asset restructuring progressing?" A look of difficulty appeared on Henry's face as he whispered, "Boss, that matter is a bit tricky.